Mandelbulb 3D software. And I just kind of like started fiddling around with that kind of in my free time.
LEDs versus projection mapping.
Stage design and layout and that kind of stuff. I mean, it all really depends on what your goal is. I think that, most stage designers aren't necessarily thinking about like, oh, well, how many VJs are there going to be, and should I make this easy or not? But obviously, like, it's more defined by like a budget. I definitely get sick of just working within rectangles and living within that kind of box. And then obviously, I've worked on LEDs in a lot of different shapes and sizes, including domes and stuff, and that can be really cool too. I have like self-conscious, ego issues where I'm like, oh, like, lots of other DJs show up 100% original show. Can I do that? Yeah. Have I done it? I've done shows where I didn't play anybody else's content 100%. Somebody might not have 60 minutes of dank content in their library, but they might have made the dopest Cinema4D render you've seen in all week. There's a few artists I'd love to shout out: Nico, KE Visuals, Tao Lin, Isosceles, Cullen Acel, Droid Visuals, Architect, 3NA, Jonna Petrie, Jonna P Arts, Kainashi, the Apex Collective, Hindsight Visuals, Ciety, Chris Northern, Matt Siegel, Glass Crane, how could I forget? Of course,
who's
the
that?
legend.
I don't know. Never heard of it.
Machina Infinitum. Machina with the fractals.
So do you think, oh shit, sorry. Do you think it's cheating?
Shout out Nico and Talib on the artwork.
Hell yeah.
Some real-time Notch radio.
Nice. Nice. Welcome to the Visual Cast. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Brett. The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we interview some of the most unique, interesting, high-level, and exciting artists from all over the world. Entering into Season 2, we will be starting a monthly live stream to our paid subscribers. To join in on the live stream with Q&As, polls, and some surprises, click on the join button below. Your subscription will massively support our channel and bring us further to creating a community of like-minded individuals who love, create, and immerse themselves with the visual arts and the visual world. For those unable to join financially, don't worry. The episode, like all of our episodes, will be available on Thursdays for everyone to watch. And if you want to support us, like and subscribe and share with anybody you think will enjoy the podcast. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Now, without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Welcome to the Visual Cast. I'm joined today by a very special guest, and I mean that, wholeheartedly. A good friend, one of the greats. Some would say, I would say, actually, some would say, and I would say, one of the greats. A person who really, in some ways, revolutionized the visual scene and kind of added to it in a way that is echoing still today. Somebody who is a really fun and beautiful person to spend time with personally, but is also somebody who I have learned from over the years and have really come to admire. That kind of sounds weird. That means I didn't admire you before, but I mean like admire throughout and inspired by to the full extent. So without any further ado, welcome to the podcast, Keith Anderson, a.k.a. Fractaled Visions.
Hey, what's up? What's going on,
What's
Alon?
up, buddy? This has been a
Good to
long
see
time
ya.
coming. As a close friend of mine, you were one of the first people I asked to be on the podcast, but you're too busy for your good friend Alon. But we finally managed to do it, so I'm really excited about that.
That's right. Thanks for being patient with me.
Yeah. I don't know if bothering you about it every few weeks is considered
I just wanted
patient,
to make sure you got all the bugs worked out. You know what I mean?
For sure. You're throwing everybody under the bus first, I see. Okay, classic Fractal Visions attitude. Well, for those who don't know you and for those who don't know Keith, really should, where have you been all this time? I want to just show a little bit of your Instagram because it's, it speaks for itself. I mean, you really are quite the, quite the active visual artist. You do some of the coolest and biggest shows in the country, and recently, or I guess not so recently, but over the past few years, you've been playing also in Europe in some festivals, and of course in Modem most recently. And your work really speaks for itself. And kind of while I go through a little bit of your work, so we can kind of familiarize ourselves with you, I wanted to ask you the first question, which is, how did you find fractals? As a fractal visioned person, how did you find fractals? What is that all about? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. So about 2011 or 12, I was just getting really into just looking at digital art. I was going to a lot of music festivals and really enjoyed the digital art prints that I saw in the art galleries there. I love paintings as well, but the digital art spoke to me in a different kind of way. And I just remember being in a gallery and seeing some prints by Android Jones and by Luke Brown, and just being like, how did they make this? And so that kind of was what led me to really getting into digital art in general. But I didn't start making art for a while. So I started looking at a lot of art on DeviantArt, if everybody remembers that website. Classic,
Miss it.
Art forum.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm sure it's still out there. It's probably filled with anime and AI, I'm sure, to the max now. I was kind of scrolling through DeviantArt, as one does, and found some really interesting looking 3D renders that I'd never really seen anything like that before. And it was just so much detail and so much, depth to them. And through some kind of poking around, I found maybe it was a hashtag or something. I don't know if they even had those back then, but it was a link to Mandelbulb 3D software.
Nice.
Which is a software that was made in 2009 and was never really updated much after that in any major way. There's been some quality of life updates, but it's still very much the same software. And I just kind of started fiddling around with that kind of in my free time, slowly kind of figured out how to make a render and spit out a 720p Mandelbulb. There's one on screen right now. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Couldn't have done it. Are you a VJ or something? The way you timed that was perfect. But yeah, I was really novice. At the same time, was kind of starting to learn some Photoshop techniques and just kind of basic digital art, compositing, that kind of stuff. But the fractal stuff just really took me. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it was my lifestyle at the time, consuming probably too much psychedelics, and just going to a lot of music festivals and being exposed to a lot of art. And really, the fractals was something unique that I hadn't seen as much of. I'd seen it in nature,
right?
And I'd seen it in meditations, but I hadn't seen it like expressed in that way digitally.
Interesting.
I've definitely seen some 2D fractals. You know, we've all seen the 2D swirls and the infinite spirals. Like that's
like mandalas, almost kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, in the classic Mandelbrot set with like the Buddha, the infinite Buddha,
That's
that the software that I found, Mandelbulb 3D, that base formula, the Mandelbulb, which is one of the most, thanks man, one of the most, you're digging in the archives now.
Yeah. I mean, your old stuff is really good.
One of so
not as good as your new stuff.
Is, I mean, maybe some would say, you know.
I'm just joking.
So the 3D fractal software is basically a 3D expression of the 2D formulas that you already know about. And around that time, I attended Burning Man, and I met another digital artist there, who many of us, I think, have been inspired by one way or another. And he was just having a beverage at our camp, and a huge dust storm kicked up. And so I invited him to sit out the dust storm in my RV, and we went to go chat. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he's telling me that he's here to do digital projection mapping and on one of the biggest stages at Burning Man this year, which, you know, this was 2012, I think. So this was pretty early on in projection mapping, at least in my world. The only projection mapping I really knew about was the Amon Tobin at the time.
Right, of course.
And maybe the Spangletron was kind of the.
Oh, I forgot about the Spangletron. Damn, that was an old one.
Shout out to Zedler and Devin.
Was that Zedler? That original Spangletron, the mask was Zedler?
I know they were involved with one of the very first ones. The first gen, but I think the second gen in like 2012.
That was old. That was like early thousands. Like the first one, I think.
Yeah,
that
I
was
think
really
2008 or 9 or something.
Yeah,
but yeah, you'd have to ask him.
I will.
So anyway, so we ended up chatting, and his name is Martin Stebbing. And so while we're hanging out,
the best person to hang out with during a dust storm and Burning Man in your RV.
Exactly. He really
that is like hours and hours for conversational stuff. That's awesome.
It was life changing for sure, you know. And I didn't know it at the time. Of course, I just casual Burning Man encounter. Really dope artist.
He's also he's like so normal looking and seeming, right? He's not like chill. A hippie and chill,
you
know.
Humble, he's super nonchalant.
Humble. Yeah. And he's like this crazy
there was
genius.
No ego about what he was doing, but I was looking.
We have the episode with him. I don't remember which number, but check it out after this, of course. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
Shout out to W. We miss you, Martin. So anyway, you know, we had this great conversation, but I asked him, you know, how can I learn more? Like, how could I possibly do this? And he wrote down a list of some softwares that I should check out. And one of them was Mandelbulb, which I'd already kind of dabbled in. So that was like a confirmation for me to like, he's doing some of the same stuff. Right. Yeah, but he also listed, I believe, Resolume,
Xenomorph,
Chaotica, Xenomorph, classic, absolute banger 3D fractal software, Incendia. He gave me a bunch, and you know, I couldn't remember all of them, but just a couple months later, I was spending some time with my good friend Andrew Zeisky, Bird's Eye Visuals, and he told me about Resolume, which was also one of the ones that Martin had told me about, and so all these things were kind of happening within a couple months of each other, and I was really at the time in my life looking for like a new chapter, and I wanted to make digital art a thing. But I didn't really know, you know, how or what or I was going to do that. I've mostly been exposed more to like printed artwork or like a digital still, but the idea of animations and rendering and then, you know, live performance, that was something that I'd only just recently kind of like through the conversation with Martin and through a few other events that I'd gone to recently in the San Francisco Bay Area, kind of started to see like, oh, wow, like you can be manipulating this as a whole. Like it's not just kind of like a predetermined thing, which up until that point, that's kind of how I felt when I went to concerts. You know, when you see something that feels really synced, at the time, obviously video at concerts wasn't huge. It was kind of like only the big concerts, but so anyway, so yeah, I started to like kind of dabble in Resolume, and at the same time that I've been dabbling in Mandelbulb and started to realize, oh, I can take Mandelbulb and render out an animation, and then I can have my own VJ content, and I don't need to go on
Loops
people's website and download the same loops everybody else has.
It's pretty
and
crazy that you like jumped off into the deep end of Mandelbulb as like a, this is your introduction to animation and 3D rendering.
Yeah.
Like math and like Mandelbulb's also like so. I don't know anybody that's like, I don't know anybody that you're like, hey, check out Mandelbulb, and they're like, oh, I love it. They're like, it's it's so difficult
limited.
and learning curve, and obviously like look at what Julius Horst just does. He's just like the most amazing things in the world, but he's the best in the world at it, and he's been doing it for like 20 years. It's like such an interesting thing that even though you were like introduced to this very hard software, you still kind of were like fascinated by the whole idea of it.
Totally. I think that there's something about it, the generative nature of it, that makes it fun, because
exploration almost.
If you open Blender or Cinema4D or Unreal Engine, even, like, there's nothing there. There's just a cube if you're lucky. And you kind of have to figure it out, and you have to make something. And obviously there's lots of tools to generate worlds, but to generate interesting worlds takes time and effort.
Interesting.
And whereas with a fractal, like, it's infinite. There's infinite worlds, and you can have, just without touching a thing, you can just zoom in and in and in, further and further and further, enhancing, and it just keeps changing. And so it really is exploratory. And at the time, I didn't really understand a lot of foundations of animation or composition, etc. And so, but that allowed me to just have fun. I wasn't trying to create something specific. It was kind of just like, oh, look at this cool eye candy.
Cool.
And so that was definitely the first few years of my kind of visual art career was really focused on exploring that. But I definitely realized very quickly both a lot of the limitations. The rendering times, like I mentioned it's a very old software. It has not been optimized or updated for multi-threading. Granted, it can use 100% of your CPU. It can use 100% of your CPU, but it doesn't have any sort of GPU capabilities. And so, to render a 60-second animation, you're looking at days or weeks of rendering, at least at the time with the hardware that I had.
Yeah.
And that's probably still true, because now I would want to be rendering for 4K.
Right, 4K or something. Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned Julius Horsthaus, was a great friend and somebody I look up to a lot. And obviously, like you mentioned, just one of the greatest digital animation artists on the planet, and definitely sets the bar when it comes to fractals. And he'll confirm, like, he waits days and weeks on his renders still.
And he has
with a lot of hardware.
He has a farm, and he's like, his dome stuff. He was telling me, not in the episode that we did, but like after that we spoke on 360 stuff. One of his like 6 minute or like 3 or 4 minute like videos that you have in VR, it took him like 2 months to render. And it's not like he's rendering, checking it, and then re-rendering it. That's like after he already decided on the full thing. Yeah. He's like, okay, press. You don't fuck around with it, That's
you don't get a second take. You do not get a second take with that. So there was a lot of pain in the early years, a lot of pain and waiting. And I'd be turning on my laptops in my room before I go to work, and I'd run into I was staying at my parents' place in Wisconsin at the time. I'd run into their offices, and I'd turn on their iMac, and I'd get them rendering too. And I figured out how to set up a network drive so they were all rendering to the same place. And that would, believe it or not, the software actually had the knowledge to create a placeholder image every time it started rendering a frame. So if you have multiple computers rendering to the same folder, they would all start working on the next frame and the next frame and the next frame. And so you could actually network render pretty easily with software from a long time ago, even with minimal networking knowledge I had at the time.
Right.
And so, so that was kind of where it started. But on top of the render times being difficult, I also realized the looks you can get out of it are very limited. In some ways it's infinite, and in other ways you have to be really creative if you want to get something specific, like a client's logo or
Right.
a dancing
For sure.
girl, or
You're not going to do
anything
MoGraph with a Mandelbulb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you want to like be able to really tell a story, or evoke a specific emotion or feeling or place, etc., you have to be very, very creative, or very, very talented, like Julius, or use a different software. So around 2014, 2015, I was kind of, beginning to do some VJing, but also more focused on kind of the just creating renders and learning how 3D worked. But the whole thing, like, it all goes back to me being in those art galleries and seeing an Android Jones piece and literally thinking, how do you do that?
Right.
Like, I'm still trying to figure that out. You know
Especially
what I mean? That's what my
Android
whole
Jones
art.
piece.
Well, yeah, exactly. But like, that's my whole. I guess my whole art inspiration has been, trying to figure that out. How do they do it? How do the greats do it? And
how do the greats
obviously,
do it?
I figured out a lot of it. I think, but there's just so much to learn, man. And then you find new greats. You find people that you're like, holy shit!
Totally.
Like,
right. You find a new software, and then there's a guy in that software that does the crazy shit, and then you find another person. 100%. And now, like, especially nowadays with, where there's so much stuff online and there's so many different ways to skin a cat, it's like so many different ways to do it. There's like so many people that are doing insane stuff, and they could have 100,000 followers. They could have 1,000 followers, but it's like, you just look at it and you're like, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same question. It's like, I want to know how they did that. Like, it doesn't matter how famous or how great they are, quote unquote. You want to know how they did the thing that they were doing, because it's like, it's inspiring, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. There's just something about graphics, like about computer graphics, that are just so interesting to me. Like you mentioned earlier, like that.
Nerd alert.
That's weird that I started with Mandelbulb. I have a lot of mathematicians in my family. My grandpa and my uncle are both mathematicians, and so
I didn't know that.
I think I'm definitely not a math guy. Like, I like numbers well enough for but I'm not doing trigonometry or calculus or long division or anything. But I think there's just something inherently about the mathy nature of fractals that, like, really, I mean, I think we all kind of naturally just are drawn to those, like,
you can't
patterns that we see in nature.
Right?
A tree is, the most simple one. Who doesn't like to look at a beautiful tree?
Totally.
Or a cloud or something like that. Like,
totally.
The nature is just inherently beautiful.
Okay, you're getting too esoteric. We're going to get into that at the end. Okay, Keith, there's a structure to the podcast.
Sounds good.
So talking about your family, actually, this is interesting. And we kind of heard your introductory into where you are today with art and, your fascination with fractals. But growing up in Wisconsin, you've also lived in lots of different places since then. But was there any kind of like push or inspiration to be artistic, to be creative? Is that something that came on much later in life? Like, where is this kind of want and need that you kind of have to be in this kind of question asking of, like, how did they do that? Like, is that something that came from somebody in your family, inspiration? Give us a little bit of that.
That's a good, yeah. I'm not sure I have a great answer for that. I think that it wasn't when I was a kid. I can say that for sure. When I was a kid, I was not the artist in the family. I mean, when I was really young, I loved drawing and that kind of stuff. But pretty quickly in grade school, I don't know, you're not really pushed to be artistic unless you just seem to have natural abilities. Totally. Which, I had a lot of friends who were like, super into art class. I didn't really care about art class very much. I didn't really think I was super talented. I still don't. I think that's part of why the softwares and the tools that I like to use are more generative, are more procedural, are more something where, like, it's like a collaborative effort with the underlying, software or formulas, or the computer is doing a lot of the work sometimes. And, I think that's, I wish I had the classic foundational art skills of, my brother, for example, is actually an incredibly talented painter, illustrator, sketch artist. and he's a grad student studying biology, so he's not a professional artist, which is why it's kind of funny because he was always the artistic one. Shout out Eric.
Interesting.
I've got paintings on my walls that he did,
Interesting.
charcoal drawings, and so my family's definitely like very, very into the arts. Took me to a lot of art museums as a kid. Took me a lot of history museums, and a lot of art on the walls and that kind of thing. So I feel like I was around a lot of art, in my upbringing, but it definitely wasn't something like in high school. I don't think I took a single art class. In college, I didn't even take a digital art class or anything. Like everything I've done is pretty much self-taught through the YouTube University,
Right.
I don't love it when people say self-taught because it discounts all the amazing people on
all the tutorials
that we've learned from, all the masters who
for sure
that amazing stuff for us. But
that's funny.
But yeah, like when I was in college, I think I took a ceramics class to fulfill my my one art credit, and I was really studying like business and just more desk job cubicle type crap that very quickly after school I realized I didn't really want to do that. But I also didn't know what I wanted to do, so I spent a lot of time just kind of being a ski bum in Lake Tahoe and going to a lot of concerts and trying to figure out what I was doing. And so I think like seeing the artists in that community, the cool art installations, the art cars, the DJs, the music producers, like the performance artists, etc. That kind of turned on a switch in my brain where I was like, oh, like I'm paying to go to all these parties and festivals, but I could actually just be like if I figured out how to contribute, I could be part of it, and I could actually potentially be invited to go to them, maybe even get paid somehow. And so I think that when the digital art thing kind of started to just pique my interest, that immediately became like, something in my brain was like, oh, like this could be a path to finding your place in this community and in these events, and getting us, an opportunity to contribute instead of just consume.
Totally. I think that's kind of, a pretty common path for people that are interested in like festivals and parties and stuff like that. Like, you kind of get to a point where you're like, am I just going to go to a party every weekend, or am I going to be part of this? And then you're like, well, I don't really want to be a producer because that's the whole thing, and it's like a very difficult thing. Okay, well, I don't really do music, so I kind of am getting into to visuals, but it's I think it's like one of those things that's like, whenever I think about, a lot of times I think about what is the point of visuals and VJing and things like that. A lot of times I remind myself that like I could be inspiring a certain person that's on the dance floor that's like, oh, I want to be part of this in a different way. What can I do? Oh, wait a second, that looks cool as fuck. I want to do that. It's like we don't even realize sometimes that kind of trickle down effect that we have like some sort of part in. Besides for obviously, making people feel good, etc. There's like this big idea that like I went to a festival as well and was like, I want to be part of this. I want to do something in this scene, and I tried being a photographer. I tried being a promoter. I tried bringing this. And then I'm like, wait a second, I like to do art. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. So I think that's like kind of a very common thing. And it's beautiful, It's like a beautiful kind of reciprocal kind of thing that being part of this festival scene is really kind of, kind of part of. Being part of that is a big thing. And I do want to ask you about that as well. But before I get to that, so when you started getting into Mandibulb, this is 2012, you're kind of like getting deeper into visuals, and you're kind of like starting to understand that this is something that you can actually do as maybe as a hobby, maybe as a career even. You shifted pretty hard, if I'm not mistaken, into like motion graphics and kind of like got that as a skill, right? Like you started becoming more of a, I don't want to say designer. It's not like I'm not like lowering the standards or anything, but you shifted pretty hard into like more of a commercial aspect kind of thing where you can utilize these skills to not only play at festivals, but also, you know, get a career out of it, which is obviously what we're going to talk about as well. Was that conscious? Was it just natural? Like, what was the kind of the whole thing around there? Tell me a little bit about that.
That definitely came a little bit later.
Okay.
That was, yeah. I mean, around that time was when I kind of started, you know, getting away from Mandelbulb a little bit and learning Cinema4D and learning these other 3D tools.
Gotcha.
And just Adobe and After Effects and Premiere and, like, you know, getting more foundational digital art skills that I never really got earlier, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
And so, because I knew that if I wanted to be able to execute at a high level, even just with festival work or, you know, just making cool eye candy for festivals or for VJing, I knew that if I wanted to get to a high level, I would need to have more of these skills and not just rely forever on fractals.
Right.
Some people are probably, you know, like, you totally could just do fractals. And they're definitely right. Like, Julius is a great example. But it's important to note, Julius's fractals are so great because he's such a good VFX compositor.
Totally.
And he knows how to use After Effects as
100%.
a master, you know. So
100%.
So all the magic, if you saw his fractals before they went into the VFX pipeline, you know, you're like, oh, it's just, you know, it's just another fractal. When you see it, when it comes out of his pipeline, it's like mind blowing, you know.
100%.
And so so the commercial aspect was probably more like, that was like 2018, 2019.
Oh, really? Oh, that later. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that.
I mean, throughout that time, that gap, the kind of 2014, it was my first VJ set. That was when that had, like, summer 2014.
What was that?
A couple of VJ sets. My first real set was a festival called Cosmic Ascension.
Oh, wow.
It was either in Minnesota or North Dakota, in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, it was pretty, like, crazy lineup for being in the middle of nowhere. They had, like, Alex Gray was there and Kalia Scintilla.
Oh, wow.
Zebler Experience and,
sick,
you know, a lot of, like, pretty big kind of underground festivals names at the time.
Right.
I was on stage 3. I wasn't playing for any of those cool artists. I was playing for mostly the local talent, but it was kind of funny because the third stage, this was on this kind of farm that some hippies lived on, and they had a school bus that they lived in, or that some people stayed in the summer. And the school bus was this third stage. It was like on the side of this hill. So the hill was going down, and the whole dance floor was like down here. But the school bus was up here, and they stretched this canvas with this, like, white stretch fabric off the side of the school bus. It was pretty funny. And they gave me a military trailer, like a little tow behind camping trailer, to set my projector up on top of. And I got this 6K projector that I got on auction from a university, and I pulled it up there. But I got to play with a really talented artist who, you know, went on to do a lot of great shows and still a great friend of mine, Bog Trotter, also one half of the group Bog Dog with Dirty Wolves. So shout out to those guys, Levi and Curtis. Curtis is Bog Trotter. But so that was, like, kind of early in his career. But we played a set together, and I had a lot of people were, like, coming up, like, after the set, like, dude, that was crazy. Like, what the hell? And so that was kind of like the confirmation, you know. I think each phase of my career, there's been confirmations that really informed me, like, this is you're on the path you want to be on.
You're onto something.
Keep going, just keep going. Yeah. And so after that, like, things started kind of happening, and I moved back to California and started getting gigs on the West Coast as well. And a few years of doing a lot of, like, West Coast festival VJing, playing Midwest as well. Could talk, you know, at length about that. But after a few years, you know, you kind of realize, like, this isn't really paying the bills. Like, I'm scraping by. It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, you know. But if you want to, you know, be able to invest in your future, or, even just like get a new car, or, just sometimes the most basic things. Like at the time I needed to actually get a lot of dental work done and I really couldn't afford it. And so that was, just all things where I'm like, man, I need to do something more stable.
Right.
And so I was given a job opportunity in late 2018 to start doing some work on some corporate gigs using, my 3D skills basically. And working on some content for a theater for a cruise ship, which ended up in me going and living on the cruise ship for a week, which was an interesting experience.
Must have been fun.
Some things about it are fun and some things aren't. Like, when you're not there to have fun, a cruise ship is not that fun of a place.
Totally.
To be. You've got work to do, and you're stuck in this tiny little room, and it was a weird experience, but that turned into a full-time job offer that caused me to move to Las Vegas after spending about most of my adult life. I lived in Lake Tahoe, 2006 till 2019. I was mostly in Tahoe, and in 2019 I moved to Las Vegas for a full-time job as an animator, and that was a lot of corporate live events, some music industry stuff. Did some tour packages for some rock bands. Did some work for the Goo Goo Dolls and Bad Bunny and some people on Deadmau5's label, just random stuff, but also some more corporate kind of stuff, which I really started seeing that the corporate budgets were just a whole different ball game from the music industry. Even working for big artists like Bad Bunny, the budgets were never very good. The timelines were never very good, and the demands were always really high. And the corporate gigs were more, you could be more stable and have a budget to really make it worth hiring a few more animators to work under you or work with you, or getting the render farm you need to do et cetera. So our main focus at the time was working on non-traditional screens, stuff that wasn't just a 16:9,
Right.
And large pixel spaces. So we did a ribbon for a convention that was, I think, 270 panels long and 1 panel tall.
Damn. Oh, Jesus.
And they wanted it to be fully, they wanted stuff that could wrap around.
Go around it. Totally.
They didn't want to just take one little piece and repeat it a bunch. They wanted it to,
Yeah.
Did a bunch of work for Area 15 in Las Vegas, where they do the immersive room and just that kind of immersive stuff. Yeah, not Meow Wolf specifically, but
it was
where
before.
Meow Wolf is.
Where Meow Wolf
so Meow Wolf is part of that complex, but then Area 15 is kind of has their own stuff that's kind of separate. But
I thought it was connected.
They have it. It is. It's kind of like the mall,
right.
Meow Wolf is one part of the mall, and Area 15 is the mall.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but they have an immersive room called the Portal Room. That.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, I've seen that one. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
We did some content for it. We didn't map it, or we spec'd the projectors, and then we did some of their first content that when they opened during the pandemic. So anyways, that. Yeah.
No, sorry. I kind of mistakenly skipped over a big portion of your career. We can go back. But just to touch on the corporate stuff a little bit, it's so interesting how there's two things I want to talk about. One is so interesting how the corporate stuff, even though sometimes it can be a little bit more missing your maybe fun, quote unquote, of full expression, you get these huge budgets where you can do R&D and do a ribbon screen that's this crazy pixel thing that you never would have an opportunity to do. And it's kind of this give and take, right? Where it's okay, maybe you're going to be working for a client and you're under some, douchebag art director. Maybe not. Maybe it's a great art director, but usually not. But now you have this really fun experience to do XR, to do, some interesting screens, to do some interesting stuff. And there's kind of that, especially when you're earlier on in your career, when you're kind of finding your voice, finding your expression, it's almost kind of cool to be put in a box, right? Because you're the box that you're being put into is a box that you would never be put into anywhere else if you were just doing things on your own. So that's kind of cool. And I know that you did some really awesome stuff for Melt, and kind of went into your company that you opened up later, which we're definitely going to talk about after. And I think that was almost a jumping point for you, right? Of here's all this crazy, you're very talented and you can do all these things and you're really good at this software and you're really good at this, but I don't want to just see trippy stuff on a festival. I want to
Right.
see what else you can do, like for this corporate thing, for this band thing, and that's like a lot of times we forget that. I think is something that's very important.
It's a great
So
point.
just jumping back a little bit to what you mentioned about not being able to like why you kind of shifted into this kind of world with financial reasons, which is a very good reason, especially when you're a starving artist, which is something that a lot of us are. I think that we're lucky because as starving artists in the digital world, there's so many places that we can pull from to not starve. Like you said, you
Yeah.
can have a career, you can do these freelance work. There's so much stuff out there. But at the same time, I know that you're a very humble guy, but you do know that you kind of shifted and changed the way that the bass scene views and in some way pays artists. I don't think you necessarily did it on purpose or like maybe even realize the impact, but now we're in a point where you can make a career out of just being a VJ. Okay, there's obviously like the flip side of that there's so many VJs that don't make a lot of money and some people undercut and whatever, but there are I can't even count them on my hands how many VJs are career VJs and all they do is visuals, album art, projection mapping, and they're not doing anything corporate, or if they are doing things corporate, it's like super minimal, and mostly they're doing like, touring and things like that. There's so many of them, all of our friends basically. And I think that a lot of it is to do with the way that the bass scene, and please please give me your take on this, but the bass scene kind of shifted from, oh, look at these cool trippy visuals to there's a tipper set with Fractaled Visions, or Fractaled Visions is playing now with X artist or whatever it is, and that kind of shifted where you are now selling tickets, and therefore that's kind of valuable, and therefore you can charge more, or therefore you're getting paid more, whatever the value exchange is there. And that's something that's obviously didn't happen overnight. It took many years, and you probably still kind of disagree with me to some extent of like if it's even a viable thing, but. Yeah, what is your thought on that? And like, kind of, did you focus on it? Is it something that even happened like naturally?
The main thing I'll disagree with is that I'm not responsible for that. I was just along for the ride. You know what I mean? Other people like Jonathan Singer and Android Jones.
Shout out.
Really kind of like, yeah, absolutely love those guys. Two of my absolute biggest inspirations. And but those were the first names I remember seeing on a flyer as a featured visual artist, and,
right.
And shout out to the Tipper team because that's some of the first events I remember seeing featuring them.
Right.
And so with Jonathan Singer, I remember in 2012 or 13 seeing his name on a Bicycle Day event in San Francisco, and I went to the show and I'm watching. It said like with visuals by Jonathan Singer, and I'm watching what they're doing, and there's like just these videos like melting into each other. I'm like, how? At the time, I didn't even understand how you could play a video in like any sort of decent resolution without basically just like a DVD player or
right. Let alone melt it.
Yeah, exactly. Like applying effects to it. Like I played with the the Xbox visualizer and Winamp, and I knew what those kind of visualizers looked like. But seeing like live camera, like it was like live footage being manipulated and melted. Nice. So I just assumed somebody was back there with like some really complex video mixer hardware, which he kind of was, but he was actually just back there with two MacBooks and a video mixer and running our Chaos or whatever software he was using at the time, and yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but those guys set the bar to be, I think, a name on the flyer and to become more than just part of the production crew, but part of the featured offerings and a reason why people are going to buy tickets and go to the show.
But you were around. You were around when that shifted for the bass scene, no? Like that was kind of like you entered before that, and you were in it. I kind of
entered around the time that was starting to happen.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of like when Tipper's whole thing with Android was really kicking off. Was when I was like, I want to be a VJ. That's the coolest shit I've ever seen. Is Tipper with Android Jones and Tipper with Jonathan Singer, and at the time it was mind blowing. I'd seen the ISAM, and the ISAM was so cool, but seeing the like just live like creativity with no pre-planning, the ISAM show is months in the works, years maybe. But seeing like the way Android is just scribbling on a Wacom tablet,
right,
exploding particles, like, that was so cool to be able to just touch that touch point of explosivity and creativity. And you see it, if you go to the next show, it's going to be totally different because it can never be the same. It can be similar, but it won't be the same. And I think that's something really cool to me too. So, but yeah, I think that to go back more to your question, I think that it definitely is possible to make a living doing this. If the artists who hired me 52 weeks out of the year, I wouldn't need to have a full-time, another day job. You know what I mean? The problem is summer is slammed if you want it to be, but then winter starts to slow down. And that's, obviously if you have international opportunities to go to the global summer in the South, in our winter, or if you have, opportunity to tour in the winter, that's great too. But, obviously not everybody who has one has the other. Or, getting tour opportunities that comes with its own things. Like then you're living on a bus or on planes for months and months and months. And
right.
I think that most of the people who are able to like really like, I don't know, like so-called make it, I think most of them are able to focus on visuals full time. I think most of them have like a venue production job on the weekends, or
or they have a tour. They have a tour once or twice a year, or something
tour,
like
that. Or they just, maybe they have on other forms of income that are not a job, but are investments or whatever else. And so I definitely think it's possible. It's just like finding the right clients, finding the right gigs, and knowing how to stay like. Keep cash coming in and keep gig coming in during the slow months of the winter and whatnot. And so honestly, I've never been somebody who's like super focused on marketing and reaching out to people and finding clients. Like, the first couple of years when you're really trying to prove yourself, like, and just trying to get any gig you can, I guess I used to email promoters and stuff like that. But these days, like it just doesn't. I want to spend my time working on my computer on 3D. I don't want to spend my time emailing
making
people.
show reels and whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not really what inspires me. So I try to do less of that. But I think that the people who are making the most full-time VJ career, like I think they're staying the most busy doing those kinds of things. They're emailing people. They're staying on top of it. They're looking at every festival that's coming out, if they're that kind of VJ, or they're emailing production houses and just staying artists really looped in. Artist teams and production agencies and that kind of thing. And like,
I think I brought it up in the sense of like, do you feel that there is a shift being, you've been in it for, 15 years almost. Like, do you feel like there is a shift, like, do you think that the shift has changed for positive or worse? Like,
I think it's definitely better. I mean, it's definitely better than when I started. But is it better for the people who are just starting? You know what I mean? And that's kind of where like it's always hard to judge, because
the bar of entry
I'm 10 years in. I would expect to have different opportunities and different pay and different credits than somebody who's just 1 year in.
Right.
Not saying I've seen people who are 1 year in who I'm looking at them like, how are they doing that? How are you so good already? So,
we know some of them.
It's credit where credit's due. Like if you've got the chops, and it's not only about how long you've been in it or how many different softwares you can use. It's all about how you make the screen look and how, do people love it? Do the artists you work with love it? I think that it's definitely better. Like by all means, I think VJs are a much bigger part of the show now.
Yeah.
And I think that you've got artists want to make sure their fans know there's going to be a big visual show.
Right.
There's going to be something more than just what you're used to. Maybe everybody's always trying to one up their last thing. Totally. And whether you're talking about mainstream EDM with, Eric Prydz and the Hollow Show, or Deadmau5 and
Anima.
Cube, or Anima and the Sphere, or whatever it is, like, or you're talking about the more underground stuff with the festivals like Boom and their stages, or Modem, or whatever it is. Like, everybody's always trying to be new and bigger than last year, better than the last set, and so I think that by the nature of that, like, there's more and more opportunities, and the budgets are getting bigger because the people who are able to grow, they're doing it, and they're willing to spend more than they did last year. So I think the industry's, there's never been more opportunities. Probably the best.
Interesting. Yeah, it's always this contentious question, and also it's like it's also sometimes hard to like you said, like you're in a different position in your career than somebody starting out now. But yeah, I thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So moving kind of a little bit forward, we went all over the place here. It's always funny when I know the person's story, I kind of jump the gun a little bit. When you moved to Vegas, so you worked for Melt for a little bit, and then you kind of started your own company called ERG.
Extended Reality Group.
I was like, what the fuck does ERG stand for?
Extended Reality Group.
Yeah, thank you. I should know that. I've worked for you guys so many times. I've seen it on the invoice. But when you started working for ERG, tell us a little bit about that. You also like getting into virtual production. What was it like running your own company? What was it like kind of like working on some really massive shows and events and corporate theater that, are some of the most stressful and high octane kind of events and things that you have to be part of that, we take it for granted sometimes, like how, like, the festivals obviously are also high stress sometimes because, there's so many people and there's a lot like riding on your visuals, but at the same time,
they're intense.
They're intense, but a corporate theater show, if you fuck up, you might mess up like $1 billion deal that's not going through. So, it's a different type of intensity.
Totally.
Yeah, just give us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Around the time of the pandemic, the music industry was obviously non-existent. And so the previous company I was working for kind of dissolved, and myself and a couple of the other animators who were working there started really looking at Unreal Engine and just learning those workflows. I don't know what it was about the pandemic, but obviously just the nature of it pushed a lot of people to learn the virtual production workflows, to get into Unreal, to get into live streaming, to get into green screening, to get into LED volumes. And so that was really like, in 2020, we founded Extended Reality Group to really focus on corporate live events and virtual production, specifically with in-camera VFX workflows, using LED volumes, which, I know that all about. For any listeners who don't, that's kind of the technology that they use to create more advanced kind of CGI looks than green screen allows for, and it's used on a lot of Star Wars shows and Mandalorian, etc. So we love those buzzwords. And so that was really like 2020. We started learning. Like we had one client who said, "Hey, if you guys can figure this stuff out, like I've got gigs for you." And sure enough, like 6 months later, we showed him what we'd accomplished, and we're patching hundreds of DMX fixtures into a real-time scene with like fog being driven by DMX and hundreds of dancing characters and baked vertex animation and all the tricks and whatnot. And and he was just like, "Oh damn, all right, let's go." So the next day he called us with a gig for Sony to go shoot a virtual production commercial in Nashville. And this was in like August 2020 when most people weren't leaving the house,
Right.
All in masks and getting tested every single day on site, and the next 2 years of my life was pretty much spent living mostly in hotels, shooting a lot of commercials, a lot of car commercials, because obviously the live events weren't happening in person because of COVID. But the new live events were all virtual with a live presenter on virtual stages. And so all these corporate clients wanted to do, you know, they're just like the festivals. They want to one up their last one.
Yeah, they want the cool shit.
Exactly. They want this year's convention to be cooler than last year's so they can get their marketing budgets approved for next year. And so, you know, we did that for a while. I was doing a lot of Unreal Engine programming. It was primarily what I was active on. Going on site to calibrate the LED volumes with Disguise, occasionally end display, occasionally Pixatope. Obviously getting camera tracking synced in, and working closely with companies like Creative Technology Group and LMG to help execute for their clients. So I was a small piece of my company was a small piece of a much bigger, projects for the most part. And then we also kind of manage the logistics for several clients as well to kind of do the whole front to back type thing. So a lot of green screen shoots. We did projects for clients like Twitch and Epic Games, some Fortnite stuff, esports.
Oh yeah, that Twitch one. I remember. I forgot about that Twitch one. You guys took my took my job. You took my job.
It's a small world, man. Back in those days, And
Totally.
There was only really a handful of companies really competing for those jobs, which is part of why we were attracted to it, is because there's thousands of animation companies out there and tens of thousands of animators, freelance animators out there. And I won't claim to be the best by any means, and so trying to land a needy corporate client as an animator can be pretty hard when you're competing against all these other options. Trying to land a virtual production gig when there's only a few options out there, a lot less challenging. And so
especially back then at the beginning, where it was like, you have a handful of people that can do end display, another handful of people that can do disguise, virtual production, and then a handful of people that are actually talented and can make like cool looking stuff. It's like, and then there's very, very little people that can do all of those things, like,
and being able to do it in a very timely fashion while a director is chewing you out over the walkie-talkie,
and nobody knows how to do it, and nobody knows how to do it, and you're just figuring it out as it's going along. And it was a very interesting
cluster of computers. So you make an update on one, and now you need to push that update to 8 or 10 computers.
Right.
There's just so much stuff that is not based around actually just like making the art.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It's how to plug it in, how to set up Genlock, how to run the camera
tracking.
There's so many things. That,
optimization, to run live.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of stuff that, like, honestly, it doesn't excite me as much, but I like figuring it out. I don't know why, but I like making those things work, and that's where kind of I found that. And I mentioned it earlier, like, I'm not the most creative person. I don't pick up a pen and pencil and draw you a beautiful picture, but I can pick up a particle system and make it look cool. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of dynamic and it's happening on its own. But the technical programming and blueprinting in Unreal and in Notch, and now starting to dabble a little bit in Touch Designer with that kind of stuff. That's kind of where I found a niche for myself that is part art, part content, part design, part technical. There's all these pieces. And when you kind of bridge that gap, you're like kind of right in the middle is creative technologist. That's like the best, like, broad term that kind of explains it. But that's just kind of what I found is where I fit into these bigger projects the best. Because there's always going to be a better designer out there who's going to come up with a better storyboard or a better concept art. When you're talking about big projects, I'm not going to draw your concept art for, the next Marvel film, but I definitely could go set up the LED volume to make sure
for the next
totally.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So,
totally.
So those are kind of the things that, it's not rocket science, but it does take a lot of learning and experience on set to learn how to not do it and the things that break it.
It is kind of like rocket science, not like actually rocket science, but like just like in rocket science, you need to know not just physics, right? You need to understand engineering, you need to understand electrical, you need to understand software. There's like a lot of things that kind of tie into it all, right?
Audio delay.
Yeah. Totally. So there's like all these things I think with virtual production that it's like designer is great, but if you're coming at it as like a systems engineer or something like that, you might be missing like understanding how the system engineer looks, right? Or like how it needs to operate. So it's like having having those two worlds, I think, is where we kind of like really had this upper hand. So kind of brings us, a little bit to where you are right now, where you're working for a really big company, the Sphere. Obviously, everybody knows the Sphere in Vegas. I know you can't talk about it too much, but, just give us a little bit of a rundown of maybe like your day to day, how being a creative technologist kind of feeds into you being hired there or working there. And just really anything you want to tell us about it, because it's super fascinating to get a first-hand experience of what it's like to work for the Sphere.
Totally. Yeah, there's not a lot I could say officially on the record. I can definitely talk a little bit about kind of like the transition from, what I was doing before into this. And so everything in my last job where I was doing the virtual production stuff, combined with all the work I was doing in the music industry for VJing, kind of led me to find this job opportunity. And when I saw the job listing, I was just like, I need to take this. I need to apply for this because I've never seen a job listing that was, more perfect for me. So I really can't talk about the day to day there or any of the work that I do there. Unfortunately, they have very, very big legal teams that prevent us from going on the record about anything that we do specifically. What I can't say, I can talk about the Sphere, just like what we know publicly about it. It's definitely a really immersive. I've never seen anything more immersive. It's like being in VR with 10,000 people. So, we need to go to see a show together there. But yeah, the virtual production stuff kind of slowed down in 2023 specifically. It really like hit kind of a wall where these companies were doing a lot of, they wanted to do a lot of corporate stuff during the pandemic. And as soon as the pandemic was over, everybody was back to live in-person traditional stuff. And so myself and my business partners kind of decided to pivot and started, just doing more traditional work, animation work. But like I said before, it's hard to stay, to be ahead of the pack in a bigger field with a lot of big fish in it. And so, I was looking for what's next because I was kind of working for a small company. You end up wearing a lot of hats. And I was really like, what I noticed was that I got the most enjoyment at my old job on the gigs where I was just one part of a much bigger team. And I was able to really focus on that one specific thing that I needed to do to make the project happen, whether it was camera tracking, whether it was setting up blueprints, whatever it was. But I didn't have to worry about the final output or the records or the color space on the camera or the million other variables that go into making one of those shows work. But when I was the boss of my own company, I did have to worry about a lot of those things on a lot of projects. But the projects that I enjoyed were the ones where I got to be a part of something much, much bigger, and I was just a small piece. And so that's I think something I can talk about is just that, like, that's something I'm really enjoying at this phase in life, is being able to be part of a team and be able to work with really smart and talented, passionate people is amazing. And that's something I encourage everybody to look for in their own lives, whether it's, at a company or as a freelancer or as gig work, is just looking for people who are passionate about what they're doing. That's something I've encountered. Those are the people I want to work with more.
Right. Again and again. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I go to work, it's not obviously the paycheck is a necessary part, but like that's not why I'm doing the work that I do. You know what I mean? I'm not VJing. I don't do VJ gigs to get paid. I do VJ gigs because I enjoy being able to create that kind of art and experience that and create an experience for other people. And so it's all about the passion, you know. And when we go to these festivals, like, you know, it's something I've noticed too in the video industry and with visuals is like when you meet other visual VJs, they're almost always stoked to be there. Occasionally you meet somebody who's not. Maybe it's not their kind of music. Maybe they think they're not getting paid enough. Maybe, who knows? You know, they're going through something personal, but like generally those people don't get invited back. It's, you know, it's when you work with the people who are passionate and excited to be there just for the sake of doing something fun and awesome and creative. And that I think is what's allowed the company that I work for now to become what it is passion.
Interesting. I love that kind of take on it. You know, it's something that I think a lot of us don't really realize when you think about such a big, huge corporate company. You know, you don't think about passion necessarily, but you know, it's always fun when we get to meet and talk about like, well, you obviously don't tell me anything because you're not allowed to, but whenever I get to hear about what's going on, it's always very interesting because it really does feel like an environment that is kind of like catered or catering to what you're saying, like this passion and kind of sharing and, you know, smart people coming together to make something really big because it's something really big, right? Like that's like the thing of it. It's like every show is big, like not just the pixels, but just like the immersion and the concepts and everything involved in it. So that's really cool, and I'm so happy that you're kind of like enjoying it. I always, you know, it's funny. We both started jobs around the same time, and we're both kind of like in these jobs that like totally fit our personalities perfectly. It's like so funny. But I'm really happy for you that you're kind of in that position. So as we get into your set here, I want to talk a little bit about real time because, you know, Cinema4D, Mandelbulb, we talked about, you know, motion graphics and that kind of world of virtual production and kind of all those things, but they all kind of revolve around real-time graphics, real-time 3D, generative 3D, whatever you want to call it. And it's something that I'm super, super passionate about. You know, I don't do any loops. I'm loopless. I'm a little bit more of a purist, but you know, you are one of the best Notch people out there. I probably would be if I kept on doing Notch, but I stopped. So, you know, you kind of took the reins there. But, you know, all jokes aside, you really are.
Yeah, maybe in the VJ world, I think there's a lot of big dogs in the Notch industry who are more doing like the media server, IMEG stuff that I still look up to, you know, Controlled Chaos and Berto and some of those guys. But
fair enough. Although Berto doesn't really.
I'd like to think I at least understand it.
I would say, and I feel like I have a little bit of authority to say that you are very, very good at Notch, and not only Notch, you have a good concept of real-time visuals and what that means, and that's something that's like being good at Notch, like Control D Chaos. Yeah, he makes really awesome stuff, but. Excuse me, can he, like, he probably could, but does he, you know, make a VJ rig and have all his stuff in real time and be able to create content that's like, you know, which we're going to see in a moment what you do. You know, it's a totally different experience. And like, you know, there's many artists out there that don't do that are amazing VJs. You know, I always like think about Droid, you know, he doesn't do anything real time, but when you watch a Droid show, you're like blown away by the ability to take something so high quality and make it feel fresh and new and real time and VJ kind of vibes. So it's a totally different skill. And I think that you're really, really good at it, whether you want to, you know, take it or not. But, you know, like, how did you find real time? You know, what are some maybe takeaways from being around real time for so long now? And maybe, you know, give us some advice for people that are trying to get into it.
Sure. Yeah, how did I find real time? I guess I think Touch Designer was the first. Nice. Touch Designer was the first the first real time software that I was really made aware of. Yeah. At least knowing about it in that vein of like this. That's what this is. It is just real time software, you know. And yeah, I really only ever dabbled, but I had a good friend who was using it in 2014, 15, around the time I was really getting going with VJing, and I was always like, wow, that looks complex, and something about the UI always kind of pushed me away from it. Um, but a couple of years later, when I was working in Vegas, and after kind of just seeing how my VJ career evolved, I started integrating GLSL shaders just using a Resolute plugin that I wasn't using my own shaders. I was just, ripping them off of Shader Toy. I'd like dabble in them and try to figure out the code to change a camera or change some colors. And, you kind of reverse engineer it, but
totally.
But that was probably the first real time I actually used in my VJ sets was GLSL shaders. But then in 2017, 2018-ish, the Datagramma guys, who are another great VJ crew,
shout out
from Portugal, and then
David
that works very closely with David and Agrau, as well as Theron Prey. And so Theron was developing Synesthesia, which is all based Synesthesia Live, which is all based on GLSL, and their whole VJ show is mostly GLSL. And at the time, they were prolific and still are, but at the time I was, just blown away by what they were doing, and seeing their show and how they were using I saw some of the same shaders that I was using in my show. They have so much more control because they really know how they're
right. That's so funny.
High level. So I was like, I kind of steered away from the GLSL, and also because the Synesthesia, that software gives so many people now access to it, which is an amazing thing. But then you have the downside is now a lot of sets start to have this kind of look. And so I kind of wanted to get away from that a little bit. And around that time that I moved to Vegas, I discovered Notch and was actually finally able to purchase a license for myself and then get a license to the company. And I don't even remember how I learned about it, honestly. I want to say maybe through Alex Boxcat. He's from the UK.
Boxcat,
super talented, legendary VJ. Lexi, and I want to say maybe seeing what he was doing, he was starting to integrate some Notch stuff, and I was like, oh, that looks like fun. And I tried it. I was like, oh, I can totally do this. Like, this makes sense in my brain. It just kind of clicked in the first few days that I tried it. Versus Touch Designer, every time I tried to get into it, I just struggled for whatever reason, and so I don't know what is it about Touch Designer tutorials, but they put me to sleep, man. I love Touch Designer; it's so cool.
That's funny.
But the tutorials, they just they kind of make me tired. Even last night, I was trying to learn some pops. Pops are out. And, I just fell asleep on the couch watching pops tutorials. So. But Notch keeps me awake, which is not a better thing.
Yeah, totally.
And so I really started using a lot of Notch in my personal VJ career, and at every opportunity trying to integrate it into my corporate gigs as well, which it's few and far between that we would get an opportunity to use it on a corporate gig, but once in a while. It's for me, it's just such an easy tool to work with. I'm sure you've had, I know you've had Steven and a couple other artists on here who are into kind of showing it off. But it's just it's such a fun, and I know that you've used it extensively as well too.
I love Notch. It's my favorite software. I use it all the time.
I know you do. That was kind of like my first foray into real time, and then, as I mentioned, when the pandemic became a thing and things started going virtual, was when I started getting into Unreal and focusing more on that. So the last kind of 2020 through 2023, 2024-ish was doing a lot of Unreal, but not so much for VJing, but sometimes for but not for like live. I don't do Unreal live. I like to render like fractals and stuff from Unreal. Shout out to the Machina Infinitum guys. They have an awesome plugin for Unreal that can make some really pretty fractals. So we'll show some of those off in a little bit here. But I like to render with Unreal, and then I like to play live with Notch and integrating Notch and Resolute into my kind of live performance. So,
fuck yeah. And yeah, I mean, any kind of like, before we get into your set here, we're about to get into it, but any tips or advice you would give to anybody that's maybe starting to VJ, getting into VJing, and want to make the leap into real-time graphics, generative graphics?
Yeah, what kind of advice? I guess if you get into Notch, be prepared for the pain in your bank account. If you get into Unreal, be prepared for the pain in
the learning curve.
Learning every little piece of Unreal. And if you get into Touch, be prepared to also pain.
For sure, different type of pain.
I think explore it all. Like, that's my biggest piece of advice, is like, try it. Like, there's free trials for everything. There's free versions. There's hacks out there. Like, just do whatever it takes to get access to the tool. I would never encourage anything illegal, of course. Do what you got to do to get access to the tools, to try it. And once you learn how to use it, you can decide what's worth paying for, what's worth really diving deeper into. Like, I've tried Touch many, many times, and lately I'm using it more, but more for data, OSC, that kind of stuff. And
media.
I want to use it for making content. I need to get good at it, and I need to find the workflows that, like, every software has different ways you can work in it, right? And if when you find those workflows that make sense in your brain, that's when you can start being creative. And so finding that, some people like to say flow state. I don't really call it that. I just find the stuff that clicks and makes sense. If it makes sense, you can have fun. If you're struggling to figure out how the software works, or where the button is, or what that's called, or you're just still kind of pushing through tutorials, you're going to have less easy time just being super creative. The more deeply you understand, but not to take anything away from watching tutorials, of course. Like, that's my entire career.
It's the way you start. It's the way you figure it out.
Learning tutorials and branching off from there and figuring out how to apply techniques to do your own thing, to the point where you can pick it up and just create from scratch. And that's like, Unreal, Notch, Cinema4D, other softwares I can pick it up and create from scratch. Touch, I'm still at the point where I'm like kind of dabbling between tutorials and building stuff from scratch, and depending on what I need to do. So
that's good advice. I think it's good advice. Try and try them all. Everybody's going to have a different connection to things. Everybody's going to have a different relationship to things. Here's
another one. Don't be afraid of nodes. Don't be afraid of nodes. Node-based stuff looks scary at first, usually because you're looking at a really unorganized node graph, like you're going to see on my screen in a few minutes here. But a cleanly organized, well done node graph is not a scary thing. And generally, to get going with nodes, you only need a few nodes, and it's actually often easier to see what's going on, because you don't have to click through all these sub-menus to figure out why that's happening or what's having that effect. So
it's visual, right? It's visual scripting. Like, as a visual person, it helps it a lot.
And if you're only ever used to like Adobe Photoshop style interfaces, nodes can be kind of scary and kind of like, oh, there's so much going on. But don't be afraid of nodes. That's probably the biggest thing.
It's a really good advice. And I would also just add to that is, like, a lot of softwares have nodes, right? Like Cinema4D has nodes for materials, and Blender has nodes for geometry nodes. I think that when it comes to that's like very procedural kind of non-destructive environments, which is really useful and positive, powerful. But when it comes to Notch, blueprints in Unreal, Touch Designer, Tool, or I guess what's the new name for Tool now? Twilster?
Oh yeah.
They have a new name now.
Tickler.
Anyway, it's a different experience because you're creating a system, you're creating a program, and it's not that it's not okay or it's not good to learn geometry nodes or material nodes in Cinema4D or whatever in Octane, but it's a different beast. It's a different beast versus like procedural kind of like thinking versus like building a system that is talking to itself through different places and referencing, and you have attributes and parameters. And I think that personally, I think that the best way to learn node-based visual scripting is through a real-time interface where anything you change and everything you make a different thing of, you get an instant feedback of what that thing is. And you could definitely get that in geometry nodes and material nodes, but I think when you're looking at like a big picture of something and you're building a system, you really start to understand how things connect and how math is gonna, take a step into it, and how blending is gonna take a step into it, and all these kind of things kind of coalesce and allow you to then go into geometry nodes or material nodes and have a really good starting, a good foundation to be able to use those systems. So I always advise people to start from something like Touch Designer because it's so foundational, where it's like you have to build a particle system. You have to build a GLSL network, or et cetera, and once you do that, then you have a very good fundamental understanding of the flow of information.
Totally. Yeah, it does force you to learn kind of how things work a little more under the hood, and for people who are just mega creative and can just ideas just flow out of them. Maybe they don't really care how it works under the hood. They just want to get straight into the creativity. Yeah. But
which is you said, totally okay.
If you want to be able to know how to fix things when shit goes haywire or your system's not working, and you want to feel like knowing how things work is a major skill.
Essential. Yeah.
And it really is to be able to go far in this industry. I think lots of people can make pretty pictures. It's making the pretty pictures work on screen, on stage, in camera, whatever it is, in that for that project.
Interesting.
That's, I think, how you can have a career versus just saying, I'm an artist. And if your art's
no shade, right? Like no shade. Like anybody has their way of doing things.
Most people who just make 3D renders or just know how to render content, if all you're doing is rendering content, selling, say, VJ clips, or printing artwork on T-shirts or on the wall, that is a very tough business to keep the bills paid in.
Totally.
There's probably a million digital artists out there that you can buy prints from right now. And so I personally have never really pursued that heavily. I've dabbled a little bit in clothing or that kind of thing, but even just selling design work, there's a million people who can make pretty pictures, but if you can make it work for this client's needs when they want to put that image on this screen, or they want to make the T-shirt, they want to put their graphics onto a piece of clothing, and you need to use Marvelous Designer and know how to UV map a piece of clothing. These are all things that cool. Now you can design clothes,
right?
And that has nothing to do with rendering content, but now you could actually design clothing in a more professional way than just designing a screen print on it. You can design stitching, whatever. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but
no, it's the same thing as ArchViz or something like that. It's like it's like a specialized skill, right? And your specialized skill can be creative technologist, it can be material designer, it could be environment designer, it could be marvelous, clothing designer.
The more specialized skills that you can pick up and be, you don't need to be the best at, you don't need to be expert, but if you can get to intermediate, the more of those specialized skills, the more potential jobs that you could apply for, so to speak, or you would be a potential for.
And your art is going to benefit from it as well, right? Because now you're not stuck into software A or B or C, and maybe in the past you were downloading, some Mixamo animations, but now you know how to do mocap. So now you can do your own mocap,
or even
whatever.
Just knowing how to edit those Mixamo animations or connect them, 100%. Or blend them. There's 100%. There's so many different things that you can take deeper and deeper and deeper in. I am definitely a jack of all trades, a master of none. But trying to pick up as many of those kind of intermediate skill level things will set you apart, because here's the thing: VJing is not an advanced skill set.
Right.
On its face, VJing, being able to turn on Resloom and encode DXVs and output and mix, anybody can do it. you just need access to the software and the hardware. Like, it's not a hard thing. It's a fun thing. I don't want to take anything away from people who do it. And, you know,
we do it.
You can, yeah, I do it all the time. I love it. If you can make a career out of it, just pushing buttons on an APC40 or whatever and running Resolume, like, fuck, more power to you. But, you know, the more other things you can do on top of that, whether it's 3D, whether it's systems design and engineering, video engineering, TDing, you know, there's just so many things that you can become more of an expert in to try to find a gig that's not just VJing. Because at the end of the day, and once you get into like the bigger gigs, like the VJs are kind of an afterthought actually, and they're very expendable.
It's operator, yeah.
They're just operators. They're just button pushers, and so, you know, again, not to take anything away from all the, you know, corporate video guys out there, but like, the more you realize you're an operator, the more you become an operator, the more expendable you are. But the more positions you can operate, now you're like, oh, well, I can do all these things on site for you, you know? Yeah. And so I think I definitely encourage people to learn about more than just that one software.
VJ,
learn about
software,
learn about how to projection map, learn about how to, you know, do Novastar video processors, or
not Novastar.
Not Novastar, but you know what I'm saying, like how an LED wall works. Yeah. Again, it's all about access, man. It's like if you have the access,
if you could do Novastar and Brompton and Helios, you're gonna get more work for sure.
100%. So,
especially Novastar, nobody wants to fuck with that. There's like 3 people that I know to call to like ask them about Novastar, and then you have to call China. It's like the only options you have. Yeah. Okay, well, I think this is a good time to jump into your set here. I'm super excited to see what we have ready for us, or what you have ready for us here. All right, we're going to check out a live set by Fractaled Visions, which is very exciting. First, we're going to convert Fractaled Visions to get ready for our live stream part. So let me just do that quickly. We get a little conversion here. Oh, we got the conversion happening. And oh, there we go. Now we have a nice little side screen here. And yeah, Keith, whenever you're ready, just take it away.
Awesome.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Shout out Nico and Talon on the artwork.
Hell yeah. like that one. Sick. Merkaba Madness. Oh, classic Fractal Vision, classic. Nice. Ooh, sick. Sick. Oh yeah. Nice. Is this yours? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I don't think I've ever seen this one.
Thanks, man.
Killer.
It's an older piece.
Yeah, it's older.
It's an old coat, but it checks out.
One final exhalation marks our crossing the threshold.
Not sure what happened there.
Nice. Sick.
Shout out Taz.
Shout out to
Shout out Talon on some particles.
Hell yeah. Talented man. Nice.
Some real-time notch right here.
Nice. Killer. It's nice camera positions. Love it.
Yeah.
Nice. Pretty. Nice.
Glitchy on that one. Move away from that one. That was a little glitchy for some reason.
Yeah, it was glitchy.
A little too much for Notch to handle.
Was that real time, those lotuses?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it seemed like the computer was getting a little hacked for that one.
It's a nice one.
Some more Unreal Engine fractals. Nice notch particles, love it. Sick. Classic Fractal Visions, classic. Let's go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's go. Nice. Love it. I feel like you had this text effect at modem as well, right? Is it the same one or is it a different one?
It's the same one. I didn't really deploy it, but I think you did see it for like the 8 seconds I had it on screen.
Yeah, you had it for a really small amount of right?
It wasn't lined up properly, so the video wasn't like matching the text properly.
The effect was lost totally.
Maybe this year.
Yeah. That looks sick now.
Thanks, dude.
If you believe, and if you want it, and if you
Glitchy, I
want
love
it,
it.
you can be so.
Nice. That was sick, dude. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That was really awesome. Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it. It was a little rough. I'm a little rough
very
on the
much.
mixing, but hope
You weren't
enjoyed
rough
it.
at all. That was perfect. That was perfect. And now we get to see how the sausage was made in some way.
Oh shoot! Not the sausage factory.
Okay, so that was awesome. Thank you so much for showing us into the world of Fractaled Visions. And yeah, we're going to see a little bit of behind the scenes now. So yeah, take it away.
Awesome. So what I wanted to talk about today for this part of the show is just to show you guys kind of a workflow that I deployed for a show that I did recently that I just thought was kind of a unique use of Notch, and maybe show a feature that I think is maybe overlooked and can be very powerful, which is the UV camera specifically. That kind of allowed me to make content for this stage in a way that you can't really do with Resolume or very easily with any with any like 2D mapping software, and that's basically to do like a 3D spatial mapping. So we'll get into it. You know, Alon, if this just seems really boring, just tell me, and we'll just go look at some pretty pictures.
Don't worry, I'll tell you. This is not boring at all.
Right on. So here's the stage that I was working on recently. This was with Jade Cicada at Lightning in a Bottle at the Thunder stage, developed by the Do Lab. So shout out to Lightning in a Bottle and Jade Cicada for having me come out. So all they gave me was a pixel map and a blueprint. And so I wanted to make sure that I was approaching this the right way. So I went in and I 3D modeled everything according to the blueprint. If we turn off this is all I really had to work with, was this and a pixel map. Let's see if I pull up the pixel map here, just so you guys can see what the map looks like.
Pixel map is basically a 2D representation of an output. So if Keith outputs to this pixel map, it's going to go onto the LEDs accordingly.
Yeah, great descriptions. This is like the final output. So this is the template that all my content needs to fit into. And just having this and the blueprint, I was a little unsure of the best way to approach it. We've got the columns on the left are over here on the left, columns on the right are in the middle, columns on the center are over here. And so initially I just approached it from the way that I think makes the most like logical sense in Resolume. If you're just going to approach this as a touring VJ without a lot of extra effort and basically just trying to take your 16:9 content or whatever your like standard tour content package is and trying to fit it onto this festival stage for a one-off tour stop. That's the most of the people who are VJing on this stage were doing that. Or the house VJs, shout out to Binary and Kit Matthews, Megapixel.
Shout out.
They obviously did the most VJing on it, so they probably had to deal with this the most. And you'll see kind of why this stage I found to be more challenging than it looks at first glance. Which when I saw the pixel map, I kind of just thought, yeah, it sounds good. I'll kind of just arrange this on my 16:9 and it'll work, kind of as you would expect if you were doing just kind of a standard layout. However, what I found was that due to the kind of bent nature of this center and of every single one of these, is that when you're looking at it from back here, things look kind of squished in the center. And to illustrate that, I'll just pull Notch up right here. And if you'll notice in the middle, like the squares aren't square. They look like rectangles, and the aspect ratio is getting squished. And some people might not pay that close attention. You might not see it that much on a lot of content, but that kind of little thing kind of bothers me a lot. And so let me see if I can just pick a piece of content that maybe doesn't look quite right to me when I play this here. So that, to me, that looks like an egg. It doesn't look like a circle, and that doesn't look right. And in fact, like it is a circle, but because of it's being squished, like folded in half like that, it turns it into kind of a squished oval shape. And from a distance, it becomes more oval. And the further back you are, the more kind of squished horizontally it looks. It's not a lot, but it's enough to throw the aspect ratio off, in my mind. And other people who worked on the stage agreed that they were struggling with that all basically with their mapping as well. So there's not an easy way to fix this in Resolume. I mean, definitely the easy way is to kind of just stretch it out uniformly, but stretching it out uniformly doesn't really account for like the folds and where, I don't know, maybe I played with it a little bit, but I didn't really like it because it was imprecise. So my fix for this, and before I show you that, I'll show you how I'm sending this into Resolume or into Notch right now from Resolume. So I am actually fully pixel mapped right now. So if I bring this in here, make sure the advanced output. So this is on the output side. Actually, let's bring this now. Okay. On the output side, you can see that I am aligned to the pixel map. And if I fade this up, you can see it's a perfect alignment. But on the input side, I'm kind of having to fit such a wide stage into a 16:9 standard content. I'm having to really like squish everything, so it's kind of all like overlapping, and then I'm just mirroring these outer ones. And so I don't really like this layout very much. Like I don't know, it just didn't allow for like that much control to me. So that's kind of why I went down this road of overkill and making things maybe more complex than they needed to be. But that's what we do around these
The name of the game.
Exactly. So here's my solution. And so going back to Resolume, I'll just on the output, I'm actually just going to disable all of these slices and actually just send one just full screen output into Notch, just like that, not pixel mapped. And then in Notch, now you'll notice it's all screwed up. And that's because right now it's just applying the UV map. But when I take this mapping node and I connect it here, now I'm using a planar mapping, which is basically like a flat planar frontal mapping. And if I pause, you can actually see that plane here in 3D and how it works. And so that image is being basically projected like through the 3D object. So it's shooting kind of like along this blue Z axis here. The pixels are being pushed through the three-dimensional object, which when you get up close, it actually still looks pretty good, but maybe you could see like a little bit of warping. If you look at it tangentially, you could maybe look a little wide, but when you look at it from back here and we hit play, now it looks much more square, and this also allows me, if I wanted to shift it, I can easily grab this and I can just change the scale of it, which I did have to do a little bit on site. Like I thought I lined it up perfectly at home, and it turned out on site I did need to like just adjust it just slightly, just for whatever reason,
to get the squares to be square.
The squares to be square and the circles to be circular. And obviously like it's never going to be perfect from every position, or maybe even any more than one position on the dance floor. But let me show another piece of content that I think like illustrates it well. Where now like this looks really square. I should have played this earlier, but like it looks correct. It looks square. The right angles are correct, and like everything is equal. And let me go back to the where's my mandala here, and go to Notch. And now like again, like I think I could probably take this a little wider. That's probably, it looks more circular, perfectly circular to me now on screen when you're standing in the center. And obviously, as soon as you get off kilter, it starts, it'll be slightly less. But I just found that this approach allowed me to have the most control on site. I only had about 45 minutes the night before to do a video check, which for some people is a lot. For me, it's I like to get comfortable with a screen like this. So totally. So anyways, that's how I set up the mapping. But how do you now get this on screen? And that's where the UV camera comes in. And so that's where also it's critical that when I built this in Cinema4D, that this is UV'd correctly. And so if I grab any one of these objects really, and I'm just going to go to my other one here where I have them as kind of a group, and I've got the whole thing as a single object. And if I go to the UV mode, and just kidding, go to the UV mode, you can see, I mean, it looks weird because of the UV aspect ratio, but you can see here that it's aligned to the image correctly. Like this is the correct UV according to the pixel map. If you squish this into the square, all those panels are going to line up. Now I did some extra stuff with the polygons here, but that's for another part of this that maybe we'll get to. But basically, point being, you have to have your 3D model have accurate UVs to do this workflow. So, for something like this, it's not super difficult. One really easy way to create a model with correct UVs for a layout like this is to create a plane, just a standard like primitive plane, just like this, except with like the full 3840 like polygons and just using the same number of polygons. So like counting all these polygons except all the way across. And so basically make just a primitive and then deleting all the ones you don't need. And now you've got sections that are already UV correctly if you don't want to UV it yourself.
It's an easy UV to do. I mean, it's flat, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. And there's still a lot of work if you do it that way. Then you need to separate each of these sections, put them into place. Yeah. You need to bend them, etc. But so I did not go that route. I chose to create my objects and then UV everything afterwards. But just for people who are maybe less comfortable UVing out there, that's one tip, that you can basically create just a flat plane, the most basic 3D object. Nice. And as long as your polygon count matches like the full tile count of your full raster here, you can just kind of delete the ones that you don't need and then move your sections around and you're all UV. But anyways, to get back into it, when you have the 3D model that's UV correctly, then that allows you, I'm just going to put a test pattern back up here because it's a little easier to look at. Then that's going to allow you to use the UV cam. And so the UV cam, when we jump into it, and hit 6 on the keyboard to take me into the UV cam, you can see that I'm now outputting the correct pixel map. This is going to align perfectly onto the LED when I pass it into Resolume. Or I could even output straight to a projector straight out of Notch with this.
Right, you could technically go straight into the LED processor.
Yeah, exactly. So
Which is
I don't
what you were trying to do in Resolume originally, right? Because that's what a pixel map is. But this is a very
the difference is now it's been spatially adjusted. It's a very slight adjustment. Honestly, it's such a small adjustment that when I saw it on site, I was like, yeah, I probably could just do this horizontally, but doing a horizontal stretch in Resolume's advanced output. But
no, but it's the correct way to do it at the end of the day. Like a UV, especially for LEDs that are like in a weird orientation or position, having the UV output of them makes more sense instead of having like slices.
Totally.
I mean, maybe if it was like all flat, maybe not, but then you wouldn't be able to use your real-time stuff, it would be...
If it was
weird.
If it was a totally flat stage, like if the panels were all flat, I wouldn't have needed to do this. It was that right angle bend in each of the panels that really made this like a necessary
Maybe I should say like this is the proper way to do things in like a UV workspace, right?
In a 3D space.
In a 3D space. Thank you.
And that was part of it as well, is that like the original desire to 3D model the stage was literally just to do a previs. And so I have a previs layer that I can output this, or I was just outputting from Resolume initially. Before I built any of this stuff in to actually run my show in Notch, I was just doing previs. And so if I come in here and we just Notch glitch, you have to reset the layer pre-comp sometimes. And now we're all lined up. Okay. So now we're seeing basically the same thing I was doing before. The difference is it's coming from this layer as an output, not straight from Resolume. And what that allows me to do, and this is kind of the whole reason that I kind of wanted to use Notch in the first place to do this is because this allows me to add another layer with another UV cam doing masking. And so with the masking, I can do stuff like this, turn up the speed a little bit, and I can start using Notch MoGraph effects that I'm very comfortable with to create effects that I wouldn't have otherwise easily been able to do in Resloom. Definitely not in Resloom, but let alone, even with like just a more simple workflow, I guess. And so, I won't say these are the world's most advanced masks or anything like that, but just doing stuff like this, like Chaser can totally do it, 100%. If you use Chaser,
Yeah, but you're not going to
you
get
can do
the
this with
spatial.
Chaser. But I don't know if you can do this one with Chaser. You know what I mean?
Right, like a full screen
You can do this kind of
thing.
stuff. Yeah, and being able to do it in a spatial way. So like this one is spatially represented. I'm sure you can do most of these in Chaser, and people are probably going to shake their heads. I can do way sicker shit than that in Chaser. You're totally right. Guess what? I don't have a Chaser license.
Not only that, but Chaser is stuck into Resolume, and it's a totally different workflow. And there's a lot of downsides to it. I mean,
and I considered it, and I looked at using it for this, and I was just like, it's just one more variable and piece of kit to add to my workflow. I already have a Notch license. I already know how to use it. Why don't I just use this workflow, which is doing similar stuff, where now that I have all of these, I can now like kind of apply different patterned effects to get those looks. And so, but what's happening in this layer here is, let's go back to that look, like that's what's happening here, and that's what I'm sending into Resloom, and then this previous layer is literally just so I can look at it in 3D is not my final output, and I did not use that in the show, just for shits and gigs for Previs.
We should say something though about the UV workflow, the UV camera workflow, that is limited to surface. This is something to take into account. Maybe you can express that a little bit.
So no, yeah, it's a good thing to bring up. So, and it's something that I dealt with. So if you wanted to do something more three-dimensional and not just render out a texture, so let me back up. The goal for this part of the workflow is for me to be able to take all my Resolume content, my whole library, and be able to use it on this stage easily and not have to really think about mapping or anything like that. That's the point here. But if I want to now build something, let's say in Notch for this stage, that's now starting to become, now this workflow is actually kind of a pain in the ass because, because now I'm locked into this UV workspace. And if I want to render 3D stuff, like rendering this, rendering that sliced look like that out of a 3D environment is not that simple. As you said, it's just for one surface at a time. And so whatever lighting you apply to this and texture you apply to the material will be output here. Super powerful, but yeah, if I want to do particles, I need to either bake those particles somehow into the texture, totally doable.
But it's not going to be.
It's not the same, and that's more of a two-dimensional thing that's happening versus like a 3D So, I did not have the time or budget with this show to go super deep in 3D, which is why. Now, some of you saying, "Well, you did this. You definitely could have just done shit in 3D instead of doing this whole workflow." But for me, I just wanted to be able to show up with all my Resolume content and rock and roll. But I did have some stuff in 3D that I wanted to do, such as like applying clones to the surface or something like that. And so for that, let's just go back to our output layer and we'll jump out of this. And let's see. I can't remember if I ended up keeping this in there or not. Yeah. Okay. So here's my main stage object that's receiving the material, and this is just in my main world, and it's using the UV camera for output. but down here I have this other render layer that's a render to texture that's kind of like its own little world encapsulated. It's kind of like a pre-comp. I wish it was more of a pre-comp, like you can just go inside of it. And I think in Notch 1, it's a little bit more like that.
Is it?
Kind
Interesting.
It's more like Touch Designer. They have these more collapsible kind of
node
groups,
graphs,
but I haven't really played with it too much, honestly. I played with 1.0, but not with that specific like workflow too much, honestly. But that's a story for another day. But anyways, this workflow, I used a whole different 3D model, and it's actually this one right here. And it doesn't even need to have the correct UVs. Right. We don't even really care anymore. What it actually needs to have is polygons in the right place and the camera aligned more or less perfectly so that it fills. So that it fills your space perfectly. So let me just go back to.
So you're not even reprojecting it. You're actually just like looking at it in the right orientation.
Exactly, with polygons in the right place. Now, this has some limitations. If you wanted to do something shooting out from center,
right,
it's not going to really do that anymore because the center's here and the left one's here, the right one's here, and it would be very challenging to do that.
Yeah.
But to do something that's kind of just more randomized and whatever, like
just like MoGraph stuff of on the surface, above the
particles from the surface or something, which I actually don't even remember if I ended up getting that in there. Or if I so I actually, when I imported this flat model, I imported it with a frame like this in the precise space. I know there's Z fighting going on, but that allows me to then line the camera up to the full output, but the pixel map is in the exact right place, if that makes sense. And so that kind of it might not be pixel perfect, but
it's going to be very, very, very close.
Yeah, I'm not doing stuff down to the pixel here. Like, it's enough to get borders and tracers.
Why do you need the render to target then?
Because I'm using a different camera. I need to look straight at it.
You want to be in the same composition.
I can't use the UV. Well, I can't use the UV cam.
Of course.
So this whole scene depends on the UV cam being the final output. Right. Whereas
your render texture looks like the UV output, just with a different.
Exactly. And so with this one, it needs to be specifically like filling the frame perfectly, like this.
Gotcha.
But I need to get the UV cam doesn't get the 3D, and the 3D doesn't do the UV. So it's like this whole give and take. It's exactly what you just brought up.
Just to go back, what would normally happen, or not normally is the wrong word, but like I think you mentioned it, which would be like you would basically look at the scene in 3D, and then you would reproject what you're seeing from the camera onto the texture of the correct quote-unquote UV model. And that way you'd be able to do things. I think you mentioned that before, you said it, but I just wanted to like reiterate it. What you're doing is you're basically going, you're saying, I'm not even going to use the UV work, the template or whatever, the UV camera. I'm just gonna render my content already in the correct UV space.
I'm going to put 3D objects into the position of the pixel.
Yeah, exactly.
Which so if I
it's a very interesting approach. I didn't even think about that. Very smart.
If I show this texture, it's going to be kind of hard to see here. That is not the best way to show it, but basically and actually that doesn't even seem correct to me.
Well, you could just put it onto the material, right? Because it will just work. It should just work in the UVs.
Oh boy, I think I might have just crashed Notch.
Oh, that's okay. We should see how great Notch is in real time as well. What made you think
Windows 11 and Notch seem to have a compatibility issue with the GPU.
Sure, it's not just Notch just sucks and crashes.
It's that. But the thing is now, but I just switched to using a Windows 11 PC for all my Notch stuff from a Windows 10, and like I'm sure there's some GPU setting. It's the TDR delay or whatever that I just need to fucking go
do it
and hit it. But
so what made you think of using this workflow instead of reprojecting like whatever the camera sees onto the UVs, which is like what we would do most of the time for these workflows.
Well, so that's essentially what I'm doing, is that I am putting what that camera sees back onto the texture, but
it's aligned already because it's already the UVs.
Already. Yeah, exactly.
But you could just output straight. You could just output that straight as well, right?
Yes. What I do, I only came up with that later, where I was like, let's just do this.
So you already had
had the
workflow.
I already had the UV workflow, was all figured out.
Gotcha.
I decided to go the UV workflow first, just by the nature of the project. Let's see, you got the mapping. Yeah, I think we're good. So let me see here. Yeah, this wasn't aligning in the way that I expected it to. I think I had messed with this on site just to do something that looked better. And so here's kind of the thing, is that I kind of decided that like the 3D look, like it was only working for some things. So I did use it for like this lettering look that I was doing during the show, where I'm able to put the lettering of whatever artist I'm working with onto the screen. Let me see, give you a good example of content here. So here I've got the visual cast, and it's kind of a subtle effect that
nice.
You very rarely see the entire the entire word spelled out.
Right.
But I've got your logo in there. When I did this for the show, I had Jade Cicada in there, and it spelled out Jade Cicada top to bottom. So anyways, so that's happening right here with the rendered texture cloning to the image. The image is in my incoming video feed. And if there's the incoming video feed, and then I'm cloning to that. I don't know why. Let's see here. I think I can actually enable this. So there you can kind of see how it's coming in. And then I'm just overlaying that in Resolution on top of it. So
interesting.
Kind of a fun effect.
Super cool. I mean, it's like you're getting the best of all worlds, and combining them into like a unified space, so you can pre-visit and see what you're doing and see how it looks. I think it's just like the way to go at the end of the day, because it's like looking at a pixel map, even Chaser, whatever, you're not really understanding what's going on until you really put things into perspective on a 3D model. And you can definitely previs things without this workflow, but this is like a workflow 100%. That your previs is your output and vice versa, which is going to save you time, and also there's no questions in the middle. I always choose that. I always choose like my previs is ready for output. I think it makes the most sense.
Definitely, yeah. That's some really good advice. Like just prevising your project, like whatever it is you're going to be doing. The more complex the stage, the more important it is. But
you're right.
Even for smaller stuff, anything with more than a couple screens, it starts to become really important, because you just start to really feel how it lines up in the space. And when you create an accurate representation, you see how the negative space works. You see how the space that doesn't have pixels affects it. And it just, it opens you up to be maybe more creative, or just more technically, technically accurate if you need to be, or if you want to be. This project was definitely a want, not a need. I had all the information to just do it in Resolution, and honestly, like it probably would have looked 95% as good, but it would have looked 95% stretched to me. And,
right. And that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can see it. I can see it in the photos and the videos and that people post and stuff like that. And so, aspect ratio is really a really important thing that.
For sure, people don't even think about it as much, especially when it comes to these workflows, because you're thinking, the screens are all square or whatever, cubes. You're not really thinking too much about how is it going to actually bend or shift, and it's very important for sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing us with that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. As we're finishing up the set here, we get to look at a little bit of some of the looks from the actual thing. I guess I can zoom in here. Kind of see what Keith was talking about in his set. And, this is actual physical in-person stuff. Look at that. Beautiful. Look how square those squares are.
Thank you for noticing. Thank you.
Yeah. God, if those wouldn't have been square, I would have been really upset. But yeah, I mean, jokes aside, I mean, at the end of the day, the extra finesse that you're putting into these things, it's felt. Even if it's not seen, it's not pixeled. People feel these extra things that people put into these actual things. So, I really condone you. Not condone. That's not the right word. I really commend you for doing the extra step. All right. Well, thanks again for showing us into the world of fractal visions and giving us a little bit of a technical rundown, which we don't get so often. So definitely much appreciated.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Going into our second portion here, I have a few topics I want to talk to you about. We're friends, so there's a lot of things that I could bring up and talk to you about, like in terms of not like that, but I mean like esoteric ideas or concepts. But I want to focus on a few that we did speak about a little bit, but I want to break them up into a little bit more things. So you mentioned that you're you said it so nicely. You're the wearer of a lot of hats, but master of none. What did you say?
Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah.
Jack of all trades. So I want to look at it in the sense of like, you're the type of person that is always really, really up to date and kind of like focused on what's like cutting edge, on what's like the newest technology, on what's the newest workflows. And, you are juggling lots of hats. And, you were juggling a career, you're juggling a company, you're juggling your VJ career and your personal life and your friends and your relationships. And, there's a lot of things. Is it difficult for you to find the time to learn new things? And I mean, I know the answer is not, because you learn new things all the time. So how do you do that? Like, what is the secret of that? How do you focus your attention on the right things? And, anything else you want to share on that aspect?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, man. I mean, every day is a challenge to find the time to do even a fraction of the things you want to do,
For sure.
let alone the things you want to learn, the things you want to try. I wouldn't say I'm great at time management, but I'd say I get a lot done with my time, but I still don't get a lot of the things that I want to get done with my time, So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but I think I kind of to build on that, like I'm learning new stuff every day, but a lot of the time you're learning stuff because of a need for a project or something at work or like your next thing that you're doing. It's not necessarily going out and running and learning like the thing that I want to learn, that I want to spend my time learning. And so, which maybe I want to go dive deep on pops or, just get more into touch designer or go dabble in some Houdini or, there's a million things. I've got lists for days of, things that will keep me busy for the rest of my life. And that's an awesome feeling to be that excited about something and to feel like you have, so much to learn. Like no matter how much you learn, there's always more. There's you never reach the end of 3D
totally
and VFX and compositing like it just goes so deep. And there's always new shit coming out. And, just when you think you've seen it all, like there's you learn about some new software that's been around for who knows how long. And you're like, you just heard about it. You're like, wait, what? You can do that, So yeah, I mean, I think it's a struggle. How do I manage it personally is definitely like prioritizing the stuff that like puts food on my table, keeps my paycheck coming in, keeps my clients happy, keeps the artists that I work with, stoked to work with me. Like that's, I think, is important, is to think about how you use your time. And like, if I just did the things I want to do all day, like, yeah, I'd probably be sitting around, just dabbling with lots of different things because I love shiny new toys and I love playing with things. I love just trying new things. taking things to completion and taking projects to finish them, that's always a bigger challenge. And so for the stuff that I put that amount of energy into, it's generally,
Worth it.
Yeah, it's got to be worth it. It's got to be something that I'm either really passionate about or somebody's making it really worth my time. But for learning, it's more like, that's in terms of like, how I'm using my time. But in terms of how I'm prioritizing the things to learn, it's less about worth it and more about like, what do I need to learn today versus what do I want to learn today? Because there's so many things I want to spend time trying, but there's just only so many hours in the day that I can just sit around, studying. And I think that the more, the better you get with your skill sets, like the more busy you become, the more people are reaching out to you for work, and once you become more professional and your time is now taken up by doing the thing instead of learning the thing, you have less gas left in the tank at the end of the day to be like, I want to go home and turn on the screen and learn touch designer, even though I just sat in front of a screen for 12 hours
Right.
doing this, one or the other, whether you have a desk job, a cubicle job, a VJ job. The more you VJ, the less you're probably going to want to VJ at home. Some
Totally.
people say, no, you're crazy. I can still go home and VJ all the time. Well, like sometimes I want to just go walk the dog or like, spend a little bit of time not in front of a screen. Believe it or not, it's wild when
I found that the more I started working in virtual production and less on the content side, the more my free time, when I oriented it to like do whatever I wanted to do, my art output or like my creative output was like higher because I wasn't so like drained in terms of like ideas, creative ideas, or like, flushed out like visual ideas. And then like all of a sudden when I have a gig in the summer, like a visual gig or a mapping gig, I'm like so fresh. Whereas like before, maybe like 2-3 years ago or like the past 2-3 years, when I was making content all the time, my like, when I approached a visual gig, I was kind of like, ugh, I have to make content again. I have to like think of like a creative idea again. And like, I'm obviously like complaining about, the best things I could ever complain about, but there's something about like your brain being like outside of your vocation, your job, being outside of your vocation that like kind of can help. And I think there's many people, and I would say like, just a shout out Steven Akori. He's like one of those people that are like always engrossed in like the general thing of like what he's doing. Like even if his job is like he's doing a lot of corporate stuff now and like more focused on like that kind of like lifestyle and work, it's like, I don't know, there's something about that guy that like he can like be engrossed all day in visuals, all day in visuals, and like not be bored of it or not like get stale from it. Maybe like he hasn't gone down deeper the rabbit hole of like the corporate stuff yet, but I don't know, there's some people that can do that. Some people can really like engross themselves all day in content creation and like creative stuff and then come home and be like, okay, now I'm gonna work on my own personal stuff. I was never good at it. I was always like kind of burnt out a little bit.
It's a balance for sure. I mean, I go in and out of phases with it, like you said, if I have something like a goal in mind and a project coming up, like it makes it a lot easier to be motivated because now you're accountable to other people. You're accountable to other projects, to other events, to your clients, your friends, whatever, that has a pros and cons where now you've got a deadline, which can be, a great motivator and also a source of,
massive
anxiety, stress,
for sure.
And so, that's always a challenge of just like looking ahead of like what's coming up. When can I actually take like time truly off? When can I actually get away from my desk for more than like an afternoon or an evening?
Go to the nature, go do something with your partner.
A week, or go camping,
a week,
take a trip, whatever,
Relax.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's almost never like, yeah, exactly. Like a weekend is rare these days, and that's kind of like, it's what the when you grow up, people tell you, oh, if you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life, and it's in some ways it's true. In the other ways, it's when you love what you do for a living, you'll work 24/7.
Or you'll just never,
working.
Or you'll never do what you actually
love anymore.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that I think is a very real challenge that like the more the more you work and the more your schedule becomes busy with the things that you're passionate about, the more challenging it becomes to maintain that balance in a way where you're still fresh and the juice is still there to make some dope eye candy when at 1 a.m. when you used to do all night jams, and
Right.
now you got like real life responsibilities and maybe you can't stay up that late.
I think you said it like this.
anymore.
It's a balancing act, right? It's finding that balance and also maybe being aware. Like, if you're aware of the fact that all of your energy is focused on your career or your work, then it's going to be easier for you to understand why you're not outputting as much art or outputting as much eye candy or whatever, and that will help you focus and focus your attention on, okay, maybe at work I won't put 100% of my creative juices into it. I don't need to, right? Like, my output is fine. I could be more didactic and more focused instead of like coming up with the best shit all the time. And maybe that's not important. There's like, I think it's just like being aware of where your energy is. Those like those diagrams with the pie charts, where not the pie charts, the Venn diagrams, the circles. The circles. Like, if you're aware of where your Venn diagram is at, then I think you're going to be in a place that you can focus your attention in the best way possible.
Totally.
Well, that being said,
Yeah,
a different. Please finish up.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, you really you said it well. Like, the finding that balance and trying to figure out how to divide your time, energy, and most importantly, creative effort. And like, what I was going to say about that is that, like, with client work, it's all about finding out how to accomplish what they want without necessarily having to develop everything from scratch and reinvent the wheel. It's having templates and workflows and things like that allow you to, like, you were creative
iterate
once
fast
to build that template. You were super creative to get that, and then you can kind of build on it. And
I like to apply that. I like to apply that to my visuals as well. Like, I want to build a rig once in Unreal, and it works really well, and I can use the same for show. And every time I can add to it and build on it. And once it gets stale, I feel it right away, and I start something new. But yeah, that's something that I learned, by the way, from the corporate world of, like, the more you create workflows and templates, then the easier you're going to hit those deadlines, and people are going to be more impressed by what you're doing, for sure.
Totally, yeah. It's key to be able to have efficient workflows and not just build everything from square one.
Yeah. Speaking of workflows and what works and what doesn't work, the biggest question that I like to ask people, especially people in your position, is LEDs versus projection mapping. Please take it to wherever you want, but I want to, ask that question.
I mean, it really depends on the size of the crowd, I think. Like, there is definitely a scale at which projections just don't carry the same, punch, and can be very challenging to, like, can almost become more challenging to set up. I think it can be done at very large scale. Like, obviously they project on side of buildings, and I've seen it myself at some pretty large crowds, 10, 20,000 people. So I just think it depends on the use case. Like, you can get so much more creative with projection mapping, with the shapes and everything. But it takes a lot more effort to do the mapping, to make the content. And to if you're going to have a lot of VJs coming in for a festival or something, then now they need to work on that. So stage design and layout and that kind of stuff. I mean, it all really depends on what your goal is. I think that most stage designers aren't necessarily thinking about, like, oh, well, how many VJs are there going to be, and should I make this easy or not? But obviously, like, it's more defined by, like, a budget of, like, okay, and maybe physical, limitations of, like, how big can we go and what kind of materials can we work with and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I definitely get sick of just working within rectangles and living within that kind of box. And then obviously, I've worked on, LEDs in a lot of different shapes and sizes, including domes and stuff, and that can be really cool too. Nothing beats the contrast, and you can definitely go much higher res with LEDs. So LED scales more. I think projection mapping is maybe more fun and maybe more like you better for art, definitely better for like an art installation kind of vibe. So it's a mixed bag. I don't have like a I love this or I love that. I think I've found myself working on LED mostly just by the nature of like kind of size of gigs that I do, and I don't do huge gigs. I do kind of medium sized gigs, 6 to 10,000 people mostly, but that's big enough to warrant LED generally. I've seen it done with projection that I thought was at that scale that I thought worked, and I've seen it where I thought it didn't work. So
yeah.
Really comes down to like how much like planning and technical effort goes into it to make it work. I think LED is just easier to plug and play, so
Totally. Well, I mean, a massive, huge LED wall is going to have a big resolution, and then you're going to have other things to deal with. But yeah, it is definitely more plug and play than it is a stage for sure.
Yeah,
I think the more recent developments with combining the two. I did a party in Berlin maybe 2 months ago where we combined the two. You guys just did Swanee where you combined the two. I think those are the best because you're getting obviously they're the best, right?
They can be for sure when it's done properly. I think getting that the balance of light and that's the biggest challenge.
I just loved having the best of both worlds where your projection mapping, like you said, it's structural. You're getting more creative with the content. It's more fun to play with the pieces and do all that kind of stuff. But then you have the fidelity and the quality of an LED screen that it's almost like how did we not have this always? How do we not have big LED panels around the stage or inside of the stage? It's because what is the biggest detriment to projection mapping is that you're stuck within the confines of your structure. But if you add a screen outside of the structure, then now you can move the pieces inside or outside or whatever, do whatever you want with the content inside or outside. And the same goes for the LEDs. You're stuck inside the confines of the LEDs. Yeah, you could add more LED, but then it's just you're just inside of your own confines. But if you have something that's structural around it, you now can go in a really meaningful way from that LED to something structural and vice versa, that it's I feel like it's so powerful. And if it's done in a smart way, then you can really build a whole universe inside of your content.
Totally.
I really love it. There was just I don't want to never mind. It doesn't matter. Cool. Well, that's a good answer for that. They're both really good, and together they're the best. Okay, so moving on, I wanted to talk to you about you're really, really good at inspiring young artists and really, really good at, really, really good at showing, showcasing other artists in your work. And it's not controversial or anything, but when you play.
Give me the controversy. Give me the controversy. Let's go.
It's controversial in my head. When you play your shows, you're not playing a lot of your own content. You're playing other people's content, and you're really good at shouting people out. You're really good at It's not like you write on the screen whose the content is it, but I think that. I think that you do it in a very graceful way where it's you're not trying to hide the fact that it's somebody else's content. Actually, you're trying to do the opposite where you're dude, look how crazy this guy is or this girl is with her content, with their content. And I want to show it on a big stage. I want to mix it into my stuff that I know works really well. I'm a good VJ. I know how to do this stuff. I'm going to make their shit look crazy. And a lot of the people that you, show their content of, let's just use Tao as an example, Tao Lin as an example, because he's a friend of the show. Yeah. He's not a big VJ. He doesn't VJ a lot, but he's one of the fucking most killer content creators out there. on a high level and on a VJ level, and you're kind of showcasing, hey, look at what this content can do. And that could be beneficial for him if he wants to sell content, if he wants to see what his content looks like on a big stage, if he wants to get like an example. So I guess my question is like, is it controversial for you to use other people's content? And also, what does it feel like to be able to platform young artists, not only inspiring them through what you're doing, but also like actually give them a place to be platformed?
Yeah, great topic. I mean, I deal with this all the time, just in my own head mostly. Not really with anybody else. Just thinking about it because I have like self-conscious, ego issues where I'm like, oh, like lots of other DJs show up 100% original show. Can I do that? Yeah. Have I done it? I've done shows where I didn't play anybody else's content 100%. But I've always felt that being more of a curator and, I curate a lot of my own stuff, but also lots of other people's stuff, that just makes it more fun and opens up so many more options and looks. And you do things where like, combining my look with a Taz look, with a Tao Lin look, like, Taz is probably not going to do that. Tao, like you said, he doesn't VJ, so he's not going to do that. But when we combine everything, now it's a whole new thing.
Right.
That, and yeah, like you said, like, Michael Tao Lin, we really love you, dude.
We love you, dude.
He's in Norway or somewhere on the other side of the world. Sweden. I always say Norway. And he's probably not going to get a VJ gig at a Tipper set anytime soon. Unfortunately, Tipper's retiring. So, if I get a set with where I can play somebody's content at a show that they're, just by the nature of life, are probably just not going to have that opportunity. It's not because of talent. It's just because of, where people live, the stage that they're at in their career, whatever it is. Like, somebody might not have 60 minutes of dank content in their library, but they might have made the dopest Cinema4D render you've seen in all week or all month or all year. And so if I, if they're cool with me playing it in my set, and it brings something fresh to the table. The artists that I work with, they don't care. They just trust. They hire me because they trust me to bring something that looks good and fits the vibe.
Right. Well, you're gonna curate.
That's all I try to do. Yeah, exactly. They hire me to curate the look on screen, and whether that's 100% original or just my take on somebody else's piece of content. I try not to just lean too much. There's a few artists I'd love to shout out: Nico, KE Visuals, Tao Lin, Isosceles, Colin Assel, Droid Visuals, Architect, 3NA. Love all you guys. Thank you for sharing. You on Visuals, John Petrie,
shout out, but
John P Arts. He'll get his enough shout outs on here. What do we got? Kainashi,
nice.
The Apex Collective, Hindsight Visuals, so many talented artists out there. Ciety. I'm just scrolling through my library. Chris Northern with God, I forget what his Instagram is, but Chris Northern's a legend in the game. Did a lot of album art for Tipper. He gave me some really cool touch designer content.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Oh, Siri's trying to talk to me. What do we got? Matt Siegel. We love Matt.
Shout out Matt Siegel.
Glass Crane. How could I forget? Of course.
Who's that?
Legend.
I don't know. Never heard of him.
And Machina Infinitum. Machina.
Nice.
With the fractals.
So do you think? Oh shit! Sorry. Do you think it's cheating?
No, I mean, I think that, like, if I was like really pushing my brand in a way where I was really trying to market it and trying to book every gig and like try to just run the VJ scene, then I would probably feel a little more guilty about it if I was really capitalizing on a lot of other people's hard work in a way that took opportunities away from people. But I mean, dude, I play 4, maybe 5 VJ shows a year. Like, I think this year I'm on route for 6, but last year I did 4, and the year before that was, so it's like
double what I'm doing.
Like 6 sets. Like, I think I hope, and if you're listening and you've shared content with me and you don't want me to play it anymore, or you think I've done you wrong or something, just tell me, dude. Like, just be like,
No,
yo, screw you,
no, I'm
But I
joking.
think
I'm
that
joking. I know that you don't think that. I
people
really
reach
think
out to
that.
me all the time to try to offer me content to play, and it's an honor, honestly, to be able to share other people's artwork with the world on the platforms that I've been given, because I know that I've been given a lot of opportunities and yes, I'll be straight up, dude. Sometimes I don't have time to make a whole bunch of new content, you know, but I've got time to
No, it's.
go,
I think
put some other people's stuff out
you do it in a way that is respectful and platforming. There's definitely ways to do that in a way that's not like that. Just like
there.
whatever. You don't have to mention it. It's like very obvious how you could do that in a way that's like taking advantage
Sure.
or
Yeah.
not being honest with the thing.
Yeah.
And I think that if you started off Fractal Vision's project doing that, it might be a different outcome, right? I think you've established yourself even in your own ego, right? Like I remember what it was like playing loops for the first 3 years of my career, and the moment I started making my own loops, every time I played a different loop, I started feeling like something was wrong. Like not like I was cheating
Yeah.
or like a
Yeah.
phony, but I was like,
Yeah.
it doesn't slap as much. It didn't feel as good, And then when I started playing my own stuff only, it's like, oh, now I feel so great. And then as I get deeper into my career, I have patches from other VJs that I use in my shows, and whenever I use their stuff, I feel like, oh shit, this is so fresh, it's so good, Like, I think that
Yeah.
there's like
100%.
a maybe like a timeline of like find your style, find your voice, find your inner expression, and then start maybe combining other people's
Totally.
stuff into your own.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think like if you treat it like a crutch and you can't do a show without it, obviously that's a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it.
I don't have any personal, like worries about that, so that's not really something that bothers me. I, always just try to do it in a way where I'm promoting other people.
Yes.
I'm putting other people's stuff out
Platforming.
there. I'm hoping that the people whose work it is are going to get a good enough photo or see it on YouTube or whatever and be stoked about it in a way that they never would have been if I only played my own stuff for the rest of my life. They would never get that stoked. And there's dozens and dozens of artists who I've, been lucky enough to play their work and share their work that I hope that it's a reciprocal feeling, because it makes me feel good to share their stuff and not to take the creds. It's to have created a collaborative thing where like we're all making that artist who's on stage look good together. You made the art, I brought it here, I made sure that it looked good on screen, and the people who trust me with that, like, thank you.
But bless you. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for making Fractal Vision shows actually good.
Exactly.
Okay. So 2 more topics, and we're gonna wrap it up here. One is, I don't know how you're gonna take it, but I'm gonna ask you anyways. I don't think, and I'm saying this out of full respect. I wouldn't think that you would consider yourself as a spiritual person, but I know you pretty well, and you are. I would categorize you as a spiritual person. Maybe spiritual is a dirty word, but either way, I've seen you in spiritual spaces, and I've seen you in flow states and altered states, and kind of like I would consider you a heightened human in that sense. So I want to ask you, like, where does it meet you in your art? Where does it meet you in your experiences on dance floors and festivals? And how do you kind of contemplate or express that in your, I'm not necessarily day-to-day life, but just in like, you as a creative person?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a pretty deep question.
That's what we're here for.
I mean, I've been more spiritual at times in my life, and if by spiritual you mean likes to partake in psychedelic meditations, then that also I definitely have been majorly impacted by meditation, by psychedelics, by those kind of inward spiritual journeys. it's not something that unfortunately, not something that I have time to do a lot of these days. I like to make time for it when I can, though. But I would not be on this journey if I hadn't, had the experiences that I had, when I was younger and had more free time. But yeah, like I think getting inspired on art in general all came from spiritual experiences. I told you that in high school I wasn't really, I didn't care about art class, and in college I didn't care about art class. So it was later that I was like, oh, this whole world over here that doesn't revolve around, you know, what your job is or what kind of car you drive, or you know what I mean. Like there's this kind of whole other scene, and there's plenty of egos and flexing and flossing your drip in the art scene too. I mean, what is the art scene
Especially
if
in
not,
America, for
if
sure.
not that? But
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Like like humans, it's human nature to be drawn to incredible visual experiences, and I think that you definitely don't need to ever take psychedelics to be stoked on what a fractal looks like, or what a cloud looks like. But I think that those kind of experiences help you gain new perspectives on just you know life in general, obviously, but specifically like how to gain a new way to look at certain things, and how to see maybe where somebody else was coming from better, both metaphorically in your day-to-day life, but also literally when you're looking at a painting and you're like kind of like, oh, like you know what I mean. Like I don't know, I've just had that experience so many times in art museums, at festivals, looking at people's work, where like you kind of maybe you see it once and you're kind of like, yeah, that's cool, and you see it again and you're like, oh damn, like there's this whole other part to it, or there's something I didn't notice there. And I don't know. I think that appreciation of art came from a lot of spiritual experiences. So
Nice. That's awesome.
but yeah,
Yeah, no,
my day to day, I'm not
what?
crazy. I mean, my day to day, I'm not crazy spiritual, mostly just because I don't have time to really like let loose and zone out. But when I do, I definitely like
That's
to
what
make
I
space
kind of
for
I
it.
kind of meant it in that space. Like I also, I don't practice so much spiritual stuff. I try to, pray when I can and sing songs and kind of remind myself that that it's important to me. Um, and I feel like because you're engrossed in those realms, because you do go to festivals, you do go to events that can be viewed as some sort of altered state or higher dimension, that you're kind of like it's baked into your experience in that sense. And especially as you said, like when you were younger, you were more connected to it. And I think as we get older, we get um what's the word, like we get more desensitized to spiritual experiences. They become like more like maybe foo-foo, or become more like, yeah, if we don't have practices or we don't associate ourselves with those type of things, then it's like, well, I can do acid and just have a good time. Where it's like when you were younger, you did acid and you had like this profound experience that changed your life,
Yeah,
etc. um
totally.
and I don't think that that's bad or good. I just think that it's like, the word spiritual, like the word God, carries with it a lot of baggage, and some people want to push that away, and some people want to bring it into their lives more. And I know this is like, I feel like I'm like an intervention with you right now, but you know,
Get the
I just
crystals out, man.
they're right here, buddy. They're right here. They're out.
I know, I
They're
know,
out.
I
Don't worry.
know. Don't worry, I know.
Yeah, I just I love seeing my friends embrace those aspects of their life, because it's like there. And maybe like, yeah, we don't have time for it, or we don't have the energy for it, but I want to remind you that it's there, and remind everybody that it's there, and it's always accessible. Anyway, moving on. So speaking about spirituality and profound experiences, and this is kind of like we'll wrap it up here. This is a very general question, and you please answer it however you want. But where do you find inspiration for your art? Where do you draw inspiration from? And kind of maybe as you're now in a more adult life environment, what has been some key things that allow you to draw inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean that's always a tough one. I mean, there's so many obvious answers. I definitely, if I'm gonna sit down and just make something from scratch in Notch or Cinema4D or something, I usually go for something that has like some kind of an organic kind of that kind of feel or a super techie feel. You know what I mean? It's like either one or the other, like super organic and flowy and nature driven L systems or that kind of like that kind of repeating system or something that is very very like structural and maybe those are just crutches and easy things to fall back on. Those are definitely like there's a lot of tools to make those looks. But yeah, I mean I think the deepest inspiration is from psychedelic experiences that I've had. Like that is where the name Fractal Visions comes from. It was one of your first questions. Is like wasn't even a psychedelic thing, but like I was totally sober. But one of the first kind of like big VJ parties I did in another city was in Chicago, and me and some friends were VJing this warehouse all night. And it was like kind of like a 5 projector setup, just like all these screens all around this dance floor. It was a cool setup. Shout out Sea House in Chicago, Burner Crew. And I was just blasting these fractals all night. I was having a lot of fun and just strobing and getting really in the mix. And like one of my first times, like really feeling the flow, VJing to 4 on the floor music. And at the end of the night, like the images that we had been putting on screen were so vivid that like every time I shut my eyes, all I could see was just.
I miss that. I miss that. It's so fun.
Yeah, and I'll still get it sometimes if I'm working like really late or staring at one specific scene for a long time. Like that's when I'll like go to bed and still be seeing those crazy, and that's with no visual stimulants, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like just an average day where you're just staring at those pixels. They just get it's like screen burn-in for your retinas. You know what I mean? It's probably not a good thing, but it's fun. So that's where that came from. But lots of some of the effects that I like to apply, even the effects of the lettering, where I'm putting the visual cast or Jade Cicada or whatever it is. That lettering comes from an experience that I had where I was just seeing this like rainbow lettering on every surface that I was looking at. It was like convinced there was like some organization behind it all. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So we've all been there, right? Allison,
it's the
Allison
Jews,
Gray,
it's
Cliffs.
the Jews. We know it's the Jews.
God, they're behind it all. They're behind it all. You said it. Your words, not mine.
I can say it. I'm allowed to. You can say it too. You're half Jewish. You can say it too.
So I think there's so many inspirations. I mean, also so many other people's artwork and just design work that you've seen over the years. Some of my favorite artists outside of the kind of like psychedelic digital art, MC Escher, Ernst Haeckel. There's those are probably two of my biggest inspirations, just on like an aesthetic level.
What was the second one? I missed that. What was the second one?
Ernst Haeckel.
I don't.
ERNST Ernst Haeckel. Yeah, he did a lot of like
work, right? Like it's probably
like organic.
Of course.
Drawings.
Of course.
Yeah,
like he has that whole. Is it that guy with that book that has like the whole? Like it's like
there's lots of books with his work,
and it's like a whole. Yeah. It's like a whole like with a different person.
You might.
Very cool.
I'm not sure. Yeah, possibly, but yeah, he's
cool.
He's got a lot of published stuff out there. So those kind of really organic, but like technical. Like he drew it very technically.
Right, like a technical drawing.
Yeah, there's something cool about that mixture of, So
I love it.
love that. Uh, Love a lot of Art Deco and Art Nouveau. Alphonse Mucha was one of my mom's favorite artists that I guess I grew up seeing a lot of. So, I mean, there's just so much cool stuff out there, and that's where I think like once I kind of dove pretty deep into like creating digital art and just discovering kind of what's out there with art. It's just like you can explore so many different facets of ways to create just digital art, let alone before you even get into like 3D printing and projection mapping and ways to make it physical and take it to the physical space. There's just so many cool forms to explore, and it's endless, man. That's what's awesome about it, I think, too. Though it's like I can't imagine having a career in some other field where you're like accounting or something.
Same thing every day.
What I studied. Well, yeah, and it's just like there's not. I don't know. There's not like this like endless creative, like kind of like branching, like, oh, I'm going to try this form of accounting tomorrow. Like, can you imagine? I mean, so I think that's what's exciting to me about, and I encourage people, hey, if you're listening and you're an accountant, just explore the art stuff in your free time when you get home.
Totally. Or tell us about different forms of accounting. I'm always interested to hear about it.
Or tell me if I'm crazy and there's like the latest accounting software just dropped with you can now do it accounting in VR.
Yeah.
The spreadsheet.
I think those
just
jobs
infinite,
are going away anyways.
Infinite spreadsheet
with AI and everything, anyways. Well, Keith, that was so nice to have you on. I have this thing with guests that like if I have them on, we wait another year to have them on again. But because you're so special,
here we go. We'll wait 2 years.
Again.
We'll wait 2 years. Is what
I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying the opposite. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
it was my pleasure.
You want to shout out before we leave?
Thanks so much for having me, man. It was my pleasure. I'm glad we made it happen. Thanks for your patience, waiting for me to get my shit together. That's really all.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
But no, before we go, thanks again to all the artists who've supported me, all the fans, all the artists who've been a part of our shows, and to my partner Jane and my parents for all your support. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Keith, and much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Alon.
Wow, what an episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Manda Smash for the intro and outro music. Thank you to Sophie Holder for the amazing internship helping us with all the episodes. And thank you to the guests for coming on and spending time with us. See you next week.